So, I mean, every time I go back to listening to Tool, because I don't for a while, they're really dark. It's really heavy material. It's almost like, I don't do drugs, so constantly listening to Pink Floyd is also the same kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's really heavy, really dark, really intense lyrics. You have to be in a space for it, and I won't listen to Pink Floyd or Tool without headphones. Because to me, even with the killer system that I've got, it steals from some of the experience of that just brilliantly mixed stuff. But I found myself going back to it again to Tool this past week and listening to their latest album again, and every time I go back to them, I get more out of it. It's almost like it's like, yes, I know the band, I know the music, but there's something else that it gave me this time, and I love music like that. Pink Floyd does that to me. The Beatles do that to me. I'll go back and listen to Sgt. Pepper and Abbey Road, not having heard them in a couple of years, and just go, oh, wow, especially with headphones, especially the aforementioned Beatles records. Do you like the Beatles at all?
I am only because of my dad. So my familiarity with them is most.
So about I want to say 5 years ago now, somebody had taken some of the songs from Abbey Road and taken the music off. So all you're hearing is these incredible harmonies they recorded, and it just absolutely blew my mind, because they had a 4-track recorder, a Studer, that they used for that. It was a 2-inch 4-track, so it's going to sound real warm, but they also had to record that stuff live because they couldn't overdub that. There was really no way to do that. So I that got me listening to them again. And like I said, every time I return to that stuff, I get something new out of it. And Tool's the same way for me. Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin's the same for me. And then otherwise, more contemporary stuff, I'll do this. Pain of Salvation does that for me. I listen to Pain of Salvation, and you just completely blow me away every time. I'm like, man, I will get into them and then find something else a couple of years later. Hey, I'm going to listen to Pain of Salvation. Then I can't stop listening to them for like weeks. Deer Hunter, same thing.
That's because Pain of Salvation is kind of an acquired taste.
Totally is. They really are. Well, especially because between albums, they change so much. What was it? Road Salt 1 and Road Salt 2 they sounded more like, old funk and blues records than they did, this prog rock band that we got to know.
Queen.
Oh, yeah. And oh God, Scarsick. Scarsick was another one. But at the same time, to me, isn't that kind of like the definition of being a progressive band? You're progressively changing, reinventing yourself.
Yeah, sometimes we've had our arguments with people before where I've talked about how their terminology tends to be like Dream Theater, and it kind of revolves around that. Lots of notes, lots of expansive songs go on forever. For me, my concept of it is I would could have been like Mr. Bungle.
Love Mr. Bungle. That's another one. That's a great progressive band, absolutely. Or if you heard like some bands that are really kind of they're really obscure, like Psychofunkopus.
I have heard of them.
Man, unbelievable stuff. Just mind-blowing stuff. But
or
really,
one too. You've never heard the Cardiacs? That
Cardigans? Yeah, totally, absolutely.
No, Cardiac.
Oh, okay. Cardiacs, no. I was going to say the Cardigans. That's interesting. They're kind of a mid-'80s proggy rock band. That's fun.
It's funny because it's combined like a Sex Pistols punk with Gentle Giant. That's extremely. Those are two worlds that usually don't combine to each other.
So we're getting actually a comment here. There's some echo happening on. Whose mic's echoing? Mine, his, both?
On mine.
Is it you?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's why we're kind of chit-chatting about other stuff right now. We're trying to get a feel. Ron Cataldo had told me that we need to find kind of an equilibrium with the mics, because, like, for example, last week when Troy came in, it was really loud, and then Martin was actually, I think me and Martin sounded okay.
I'm pretty sure something with this voice meter thing. This is what Brent was using. He was having an echo issue too.
Just turn it off. See if it just route it straight. That mic sounds so warm; it'll probably sound just fine right now. It's funny. You're using like probably what, an $800 or $900 mic.
Yeah.
And I have them. I have an AKG. I have a. Oh, what do I got? 470. I've got the one I'm actually going to be using is the Shure SM7 when I move into the video studio. But I have a whole choice of different ones, and I'm using a Blue Yeti. It was like it's a USB mic, and it sounds really nice. Actually, I was really impressed with $200 straight out of the box, and I'm not putting anything on it. So thanks for the heads up, Douglas. Appreciate it.
Okay. No, that's worse.
I don't hear any echo on it, but now it's not cutting off the first part of everything you say. Testing 1, 2, 3. Please stand by as we handle our technical difficulties. This, as I said, I'm setting up a more permanent. Oh, that's me. That's me echoing now.
So you test 1, 2.
Test. Check.
Checkity check.
Checkity check. 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 Am I echoing?
You're not echoing.
No. So you actually sound fine. Your volume's good again. There's just something weird about how quick the compressor on your mic picks up. What's happening, Tony?
So weird because I'm looking at the menu trying to find where you change the compression and everything.
Well, it's actually kind of it's right above the whichever if you're on channel 1, right above it there's like there's a drag and drop kind of cross area.
It looks like yeah.
And that's your compressor, and it's really just compress low, compress high. You just kind of drag it around until it does what it's supposed to do. If you center it, it turns it off.
Let's see.
Oh, wait a minute! Now you sound nice and warm. That was it had a real bite on it before. Is that better?
It did.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds much smoother. How's that sound, guys? Is that better?
We're gonna here. Check it in 1, 2.
It's definitely smoother.
Check 1, 2. Check 1, check.
Now it's way too bassy. It's funny that you can't get enough. You can't hear yourself enough unless if you tick that box. It says echo cancellation, or whatever. You can hear yourself for long enough to figure it out. Anyway, echo became worse. Actually, he says. Like I said, man, maybe it's just best not to use the. You should be able, unless you can't unless you can't feed that mic. I mean, you could also just use the damn cam mic for now.
Yeah, probably.
Why don't you switch to that and see? We'll just see if it improves. Well, it's good to see you guys here tonight. Wow, it's a little light. I'm thinking about maybe starting a little bit later, but it's also, we're approaching Christmas season, and we're in Christmas season. We're approaching Christmas. So, people are checking in. They seem to be checking in a little bit later. Hello.
Okay.
Ooh.
That's the camera mic.
Yeah, that's not. It's honestly on this end. It doesn't sound any better. Let's talk to the audience there. Check 1, 2.
Yep, it's just camera mic.
It doesn't sound much better, honestly.
That's weird.
I seem to be good here. Yeah, it's
Check
picking up
1, 2.
That's right where I'm at, Jerry. How you doing? Yeah, it's worse now. What, mine is, or what you're hearing from Dustin? I mean, honestly, if it's, I don't hear echo from you. These guys do, so I don't.
Yeah.
Actually, now I can hear. You sound really clear to me right now.
How am I sounding now?
Real clear.
Real clear. This is just the camera mic.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But let's Jerry, Douglas, Tony. Is he? We have worse echo. Dustin's echo is worse. You have the echo cancel on the cam mic gear, right, Dustin?
Yes.
Is that on?
Let's take a look here.
Because if it's worse, you can go back to the road and we'll take off from there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm while you're getting adjusted, and let's get some feedback from everybody. You're going to need to check the mic so we can tell what's happening. But I should have some technical difficulty music playing or something. Technical
should be
Racer X.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
We'll play some Racer X technical difficulties. That'll do it. It's good to see you, Jerry. I'm glad you stopped by. Generally we have a really good time doing this kind of stuff. A couple of nights ago I got some advice. I was being told that we need to find some equilibrium between the mics from the different guests. So, unfortunately, this afternoon I worked. There's David. Unleashed the Kraken. Yeah, that whole thing was pretty funny. And we're actually going to discuss that tonight, Mr. Peters. How are you, sir? Because that, you can't, if you're going to make outrageous claims, you better have an outrageous amount of evidence to support those claims. The outrageous claims that we were hearing from Sidney Powell were I was listening to her give this talk about how they were going to be able to prove that voting machines were not only rigged, but they were designed and purpose-built for Nicolas Maduro in order to rig their elections in Venezuela. We've heard that there was an attached in some way or another, which I got to be honest, I'm unclear on it, a server farm that was supposed to be counting votes someplace in Germany, and that server farm was supposedly raided, and that there was actually loss of life involved, and it was raided by the U.S. military. It was supposedly and I mean, to me, I'm sorry if I'm not being specific here, but these things sounded kind of ridiculous. So for me to try and go, look, here's the specifics, doesn't make a great deal of sense, because I don't really want to give them too much credence. I would have if what Sidney Powell had promised us had come, she was able to provide evidence to support these really incredible claims, and she wasn't. So far, it just seems to me that this whole the Trump administration's efforts to prove whatever case whatever case is they've been trying to make regarding the veracity of the election results has just fallen so flat that I think, honestly, the outrageousness of it all has done us all a disservice. And it's done a disservice in that if it was handled like we have seen some things that we're concerned about, we want to bring these things to light rather than I won. That again, why did Trump lose? Because Trump. He has created an environment in which people don't even want to listen to the good things he may or may not have done. There can't really be a lot of conversations about the good things that he indeed has accomplished, because he made so many enemies in the way he treated about half of the people of this country. You can't do that and expect to win. It's really kind of strange to me that you can say I'm the president, but if you guys don't agree with me, I don't care what you think. You're a bunch of idiots anyway. You can't do that. That's not leadership, man. That's the best way in the world for you to get fired. It's the best way in the world for you to lose an election. And I think that's actually a pretty good segue for where I'm going with this. How are you doing over there with your audio stuff there, Dustin?
Still sounds the same to me.
How does it sound to you guys? Well, we don't know if there's any echo there. Yeah, sing us a song or something, Dustin. I need to get some feedback from these folks to see if
check 1 2. I'll sing you a song. Sing you the song of my people. That's what happens at 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning with your fire alarm. This is just.
You actually sound fine. I mean, your mic definitely sounds warmer, but we got some issues to work out with it, which I'll get with you this weekend. We'll see if we can figure it out.
Yeah, let's see if we can figure it on there.
A lot of echo. That's really kind of odd.
It is. And I actually have an echo in my headphones, and I don't. It's all I've got is the mic, so I've turned off the voice feeder and all I'm doing is using the mic with the camera. Which is really strange.
I just turned off, I turned on echo cancellation on mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why you would be echoing other than it's feeding back through, it's going through 2 different processors to get there. But if it's just the camera mic, it shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's what's weird. That's why I was going in and out of it. I couldn't figure out what else is on here that's picking it up.
So is he still echoing everybody? I mean, if it's worse now, you should just go back to your original mic. Maybe it's better.
Let's see.
Echo. David says here, I'm going to put this up. He's significantly and perhaps permanently impaired confidence in the American vote counting infrastructure. I'm going to have to agree because, again, they weren't able to produce anything. And as much as I was, I'm not invested in whether he won or lost or whatever. None of that matters to me. What mattered to me is whether or not there really was some sort of a quantifiable issue that has enough juice to swing an election. And if it did, I'd be very concerned. And that's actually kind of what I wanted to go over this evening, because there's obviously ways to rig elections that have nothing to do with interfering with counts or rigging machines. And one of those ways is massive misinformation and disinformation from trusted sources. The media blackouts, social media blackouts of information that may or may not be favorable to a particular candidate. And this is, fortunately, this is a free country. And I can tell you right now, I am not at this point in my analysis, forming my opinion of how all of this works. I am not even remotely advocating that we change the free press. That should not be even a consideration. But when I'm going to play this video, as soon as still any echoes, guys, we got to hear from you though, Dustin.
Well, I'm still making adjustments here. So one more change. And okay, so we're back.
You're back to where you're on the road. It actually might have something to do also with the fact that you're on a Wi-Fi.
I can't hear you now.
Your Wi-Fi drops out a lot. Oh, you can't? 1 second. Hello. How about now? Hello. He can't hear me. That's weird. All right. Well, then while you're figuring it out, Dustin, I'm gonna move on. And again, to David's point, we shouldn't have a president, especially, that is making these kind of claims that can't. If anything, he should have stayed out of it. Let his lawyers speak on his behalf, and just stayed out of it. But this, I won crap, and we won by a lot, and there's no way. This is what is wrong with the entire Trump presidency to begin with, because again, he undermines himself. The man actually accomplished some really remarkable stuff, but people that he has pissed off to the point where they just revile him, don't want to hear about it anyway, won't hear it anyway in many cases. So that being the case, Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with David. I think you got some bandwidth issues that might actually be the issue there,
Could be. Yeah.
Dustin. Ooh, now you sound good. Can you guys hear him? Yeah. Can you guys hear Dustin okay? You're going to have to talk.
It might be my headphones coming through the mic.
I think they were, yeah. I could hear that a little bit. Were they that loud, though? Or is that mic just that hot?
I find it weird that it would be the case.
In any case, the mic sounds nice and smooth. It sounds better than it did. But I don't hear an echo on this side, so we're going to have to wait for them to chime in. So let's do this, though, because what I really wanted to talk about this evening was that in October, and I'm going to kind of summarize this here, a laptop that was purported to be Hunter Biden's laptop was, evidently it's been in the hands of the FBI for a year at this point. David says you've doubled. I don't know exactly what that means. Actually, you sounded okay here. Anyway, on this laptop, there was a number of pieces of potentially very incriminating information. There were emails between Hunter Biden and a third party, a business partner, which we'll get into. I always have an issue pronouncing this character's name, so we'll get there. They also implicated, not directly, but implicated Joe Biden himself in some of these dealings with China, with Russia, there was actually, I believe, an allegation that Hunter Biden had received millions of dollars from the wife of a Russian, I believe it was a mayor of a city. In any case, what was it, Moscow? Yeah, and so these things are significant in a number of ways. First of all, there's actual solid, hard evidence that can be presented on this, as well as the testimony of someone claiming to be the business partner, somebody involved in this, that also is in possession of a couple of cell phones that have text messages that support his claims to go along with the emails and some of the videos that were found on this laptop. In October, all of that stuff was basically, it was swept under the rug by, the alphabet soup of media companies, major media organizations. The New York Post was the first paper to report this, and they had a blackout on their social media, on their Twitter page specifically, to where they were from posting it, they were actually locked out. And from what I understood, they were locked out for more than a couple of weeks. Unless they had agreed to take this down. And I've got to ask, I have to wonder, why is this acceptable to any of us? Is it, I don't understand why, it's like what Twitter, what social media generally says when they remove this kind of content is that we don't want you getting the wrong idea. We don't want people, buying into this conspiracy theory. Well, why don't you let us figure it out for ourselves? Again, where my proclivities are when it comes to, it's funny, I don't trust the government. Frankly, I trust media even less. Government transparency is something that there is a legal process to ensure that we get. There's the Freedom of Information Act, for example. We can file FOIA requests to get specific types of information. They do also have to archive emails and writs and conversations, and those go into the National Archives, and those are supposedly the property of the people. So ultimately, while I'm quite, I do not trust the government pretty much at all, ultimately, if we wanted to know what's going on, we're going to find out. We do have some transparency. So one of the things that stood out to me in this whole Hunter Biden laptop thing was, again, we're being told this is conspiracy, it's nonsense. Not only that, but we're also being told we're not allowed to make posts about it on our own social media pages. which, you know, now I understand the arguments that it is, you know, one side says, well, this is a private company. There's another side that says, well, you know, that they are beholden to the public based on Section 203 of the Communications Decency Act, in which they are a platform and not a publisher, which indemnifies them from lawsuits for slander, libel, that kind of stuff. I'm sure if I get any of this wrong, David will correct me here. The bottom line is that we were told, no, we're going to block this. You can't know this stuff, and we don't want you discussing it with people. Well, why not? So when I ask why not, it's hard because if somebody was sitting in front of me that did it, a single human being that was in charge of the entirety of Twitter or Google or whatever, and I'd say, well, why not? And he'd say, well, you know, it violates our community standards. And I'd say, okay, explain it to me. So to say Twitter did this, well, Twitter's a huge organization. It really isn't just Jack Dorsey. I doubt that he oversees all of this stuff. So for me to say Twitter did this and they did it to cover this up because they have a investment in the outcome of this election. Well, who's they? See, this is where, for me, it gets really dicey to make those kinds of accusations. However, when we look at the way the media, outside of social media, we're talking about, you know, the mainstream clickbait, you know, profit-driven corporate machine that is formerly known as journalism. So this is how they replied to it. I'm actually going to show you a video clip here from Newsmax that I think it's really relevant. And it says, I think, everything that we need to know about how they treat this stuff and what they think of us.
I just want to deal in fact, because there is so much speculation out there, and there is zero evidence that Hunter Biden or Joe Biden did anything wrong here.
We should note, again, and you and I have said this in the air many times, there is no evidence that Joe Biden was, you know, involved in any wrongdoing.
Of course, I want to note that there is no evidence that Joe Biden or Hunter Biden has done anything wrong.
I just want to reiterate.
And let's be clear for the viewers.
There is no evidence Biden did anything wrong.
I'll note again, because it's important.
There is no, I repeat, no.
There is no evidence that either Biden did anything illegal.
There's been no evidence. There was no evidence.
There's no evidence. There is no evidence.
There is not an iota of evidence.
No evidence Biden did anything wrong.
There's really
no evidence
that Joe Biden
Did anything wrong.
Nobody's ever accused that. I mean, there's no
evidence whatsoever that Joe
Biden did
anything
wrong. Got that?
Joe Biden did nothing wrong.
Hunter Biden did nothing wrong.
Biden's secret emails.
A really fishy story.
The Post claimed that the emails were found on a laptop computer that was brought to a repair shop in Delaware in the spring of 2019.
The FBI is now investigating whether those alleged Hunter Biden emails are actually connected to a larger foreign intelligence operation.
They may be related to a foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence.
Foreign intelligence.
foreign intelligence operation.
For all we know, these emails are made up.
The information found on the laptop may be part of a Russian disinformation
Oh, of course,
campaign.
Russia.
Disinformation effort.
Described by many intelligence experts as having hallmarks.
All the hallmarks, rather.
All the hallmarks of a Russian
Russian disinformation.
Russian disinformation.
disinformation campaign.
This is a classic example of the right-wing media machine.
Don't drag the intelligence community into this. Hunter Biden's laptop is not part of some Russian disinformation campaign. The intelligence community doesn't believe that because there's no intelligence that supports that.
No intelligence. I'm going with no intelligence. I'm going with that.
Yeah, there's just no intelligence.
No, I'm going with no intelligence. I think we can probably all agree on that. So, I think it's one of the things that sticks out to me on this thing in particular is that I remember a few weeks ago I was talking about how the spin doctors, which is what they used to be called, now it's the media research. Now it's, think tanks. But they used to be called spin doctors. These are the people who'd see this and go, here, we're going to create a narrative based on information that we have gathered in terms of how it is you need people to react. We know how this group reacts to this group of words. We know how this group reacts to this group of words. So we're going to group these together and hand them to you as your talking points, your tear sheets. Did you notice that between CNN, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, they all said the same stuff? They used the same words. They used it was really kind of amazing to me. So that tells me, first of all, it really doesn't matter which one of these organizations you watch. Their producers are handed these. I hate using the word talking points, but for now that'll do.
Script.
Script is probably actually. Here's your script. This is what we need you to tell the people. So between the month leading up to the election and then in the month after the election, not only did they flip that script, but they didn't say, we had previously reported that we had no information. Well, now new information has come to light, and it does implicate, they didn't do that. In fact, the spin over the last couple of days when this came out was that Hunter Biden's got a tax problem.
Oh, how convenient.
Yeah. Well, okay. So So when we dig into that, and I'm going to share with you some articles that I had read today on all this stuff. First of all, let's.
Remember I told you how the news, the mainstream media is the WWE. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, wrestling, but it's scripted wrestling.
Well, and it's funny that I wanted to bring this up that night too when you had said that Governor Ventura, Jesse Ventura, who was a WWF wrestling, he was a wrestler. He was a wrestler, man, and he had said more than one occasion when he was governor of Minnesota that that politics was the same as wrestling. You'd see these people go on TV who are just at each other's throats. They're making all those great fake wrestling moves for you on C-SPAN, and then you see them having dinner afterwards. You see them, they spend the weekend at the Hamptons together. This is what they do, and so it's a big show. Yeah. It's a big show for us, and that big show is designed really to influence people that. One of the things that I'm going to backpedal for just a sec. Well, take a side trip for just a second. I have brought up my dad a couple of times on our live streams here in terms of the way he sees things, and he did it again today. He sent me something that he wanted me to interpret basically, and I this time I said no. You get pissed off every time I do. You don't want to hear this stuff from me, and it's not because I'm necessarily contradictory. It's that I won't agree with it. Yeah. I know that sounds like the same thing, but that's not it. It's that I don't go, I like this, or no, I don't like it. I say, well, have you even thought about whether or not this is accurate? Yeah. That's where I take it from. I don't believe any of this stuff. So, and this is one of the things that it's funny. David Peters here, our friend David will. He's like kind of the master of troll. I've never seen anybody as good at trolling as David is ever. He's way better than me. I mean, I'm going to give him the crown this year. He is definitely the king.
You're not be a bastard.
I'm a son of a bitch, but David, one could learn a lot from somebody who trolls like that. And I thought I knew what I was doing until I saw David. Anyway, the point being is that from time to time, a couple of days ago, I used a local news source that I posted on one of these things on the Skeptic Tank Facebook page, and he actually said something about the source and how it was, it's really kind of curious as to why I would have picked that one. And the fact of the matter is, it's because I just read the same thing from 10 sources, and that's the last one I read it from, so I used it. Rather than going, where was the first one? I'm going to go back through all these pages. It was just like, this one says the same stuff the other ones do. So he says. I'm going to put this on the screen. He can't even spell completely. That's how serious he is.
Oh, okay.
In any case, very often I'll get that kind of thing. So I read through everything, and I read through, and it's really funny to see how much, just like we saw on that video, that the press basically copies itself. They repeat their own crap. Actually, I like what Troy just said here. The Mockingbird media. That's good.
Very good.
Yeah, that's pretty good, Troy. I like that. So, in any case, we have all of this is going on, and the way the media reported it to us yesterday or the day before was that Hunter Biden has that he's being investigated, his taxes are being investigated. And I went, why would the FBI be investigating his taxes? The FBI is? Generally, tax investigations come from the IRS has an investigation unit. David knows this. They can do all this stuff. They use the U.S. Marshal Service too. So for the FBI to be doing it, there had to be something pretty serious in there, I would imagine. They've also been investigating this now for 2 years. This is not new. So let's rewind to what was happening 2 years ago when the whole Ukraine Gate thing came out, presumably because they couldn't get the Mueller-Russia thing to work. Again, this is, it's hard for me to stand on that stuff because I just don't know that that's what it was. It could have been exactly as it was presented to us, but I have my doubts and I have reason to doubt it. In any case, they were investigating this back then. And again, back then, the press was saying, there's no evidence of any wrongdoing here. You know, and Joe Biden was not even involved. And what he was doing in terms of quid pro quo with that Ukrainian prosecutor, you don't drop these charges, you don't get rid of this guy, we're not going to give you $1 billion. And I'll go tell Barack right now. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but do you remember this, Dustin?
Oh, I remember it quite well, but there was always some sort of when we were in the debates involved with this. There was obviously on a bias side, there would always be some pushback on, oh, that's not what he was referring to, or it's taken out of context. It's like, I think you pretty much just said it.
Well, I think some of what we would hear is that, but he was there under official U.S. business by,
of course,
working with the State Department, and I'm thinking, okay, let's see it. I never did see it. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying, okay, that's what we were told. Instead of, here's the State Department edict, this is what we were working on, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
In any case, the fact of the matter is that it's been worked on for the last couple of years. This is not new. The investigation also includes, what they're investigating specifically is money laundering through foreign entities. Ooh. Wow. So we also have, and we're going to pull this guy up now. A witness that had gone on TV, called a press conference, and talked about, and let's pull it up here. This is, again, this information, you can find it in a bunch of different places, but this was from Jonathan Turley, who is a constitutional attorney. A former business partner to Hunter Biden, Tony Bobulinski, has made a bombshell statement that not only are the emails on the Biden laptop authentic, but the reference to giving the cut to, quote, the big guy, was indeed a reference to former Vice President Joe Biden. More emails are emerging that show Hunter Biden referring to his family as his asset in these dealings. This is what was squashed. This is what we were told that we were not allowed to discuss it on social media. Now, this is what we were told. This is what the New York Post, who I believe is the second oldest newspaper in the country, which puts them back into, I want to say, the mid 1700s. I could if somebody wants to fact check for me, that would be great. But the bottom line is that they reported this. And then they were told that they were blacking that out on social media. Then we see, like the video that we just saw was the press response, was the Alphabet Soup media response, which is there's nothing, there's no evidence, including, wouldn't you say that someone claiming to be an eyewitness that has specific knowledge of these incidents, this issue, somebody that has that's in possession of cell phones that have text message conversations between himself and the parties involved, wouldn't you say that that is evidence?
Yeah.
That seems like evidentiary to me. Now, of course, there would have to be an investigation to decide whether or not there's veracity to this evidence, but it's still evidence enough for an investigation to be necessary. At least that's the way I read it.
It's a valid argument. Correct.
So that being the case, the emails that have attracted the most attention refer to an actual meeting of Joe Biden with these foreign figures, and one referring to a proposed equity split of 20 for, quote, H and 10 held by H for the big guy. Bobulinski confirms that H was used for Hunter Biden and that his father was routinely called the big guy in these discussions. Another email, Bobulinski being instructed by James Gilliar not to make any mention of the former Veep's involvement. Don't mention Joe being involved is only when you are face-to-face. I know you know, but they are paranoid. So, I mean, this is kind of like, to me, Seriously, man. And what the thing that also one of the big things that strikes me is why wouldn't this be something that we could all go, yeah, that probably happened, and it probably happens a lot. Instead, it can't be, unless it is Trump's involved with Russia and he's actually a Russian asset. That is absolute. And there wasn't even this much evidence to support that idea, that direct accusation. Now, it was very clear that a number of people that Trump associated with were engaged in illegal activities. There's no doubt about that. A bunch of them were actually indicted for said. You know what I mean? So, but to say Trump works directly for the Kremlin, we've heard that. He is an asset of the Kremlin. We've heard that from Adam Schiff. We heard that from Swalwell. We've heard this, and we talk about how Trump was reckless with the kinds of things that he would say and the accusations that he would make. We also heard from Adam Schiff that he had direct, irrefutable proof that this was the case, and he never produced it. So, and again, I'm not saying that Trump didn't do any of that. I'm saying we never saw it if he did. So, but we spent a couple of years trying to find out. If we were to just boil it all down to what it is, we spent a couple of years and tens of millions of dollars trying to figure it out. Did that actually happen? Was Trump actually a asset of the Russian government? It was never proved. So this seems to me like something we would want to know, wouldn't it? I mean, isn't this something that we should, as Americans, be concerned about, regardless of which side of the political aisle we fall on? Well, apparently it isn't, because as David has pointed out more than once, as I've pointed out more than once, we are consumers and we consume information. And so the people who provide us information make money. They get paid based on the information they provide us. If we stopped consuming information that was contradictory to the truth, facts, information, if we stopped consuming information that was designed to perpetuate partisan divides, ideological splits, then they would stop producing it. Instead, they would produce stuff so we got to change the market. Right now, the market is Trump bad. Everything you report about him, we believe. We're just going to accept it. Biden, great. I don't care much about him. Let's vote for him. And then put a guy in office at the highest possible seat of power that you don't even know anything about. To me, this is freaking lunacy. And this is the kind of world that we currently live in.
It is. It's mad.
So I did not vote for Trump. I did not vote for Biden. Neither one of them. I think it's kind of inane to vote for either one of these guys. But where I am, in terms of, and we're going to move on to another one here in just a second. Where I am with this is this is why I want people to come tell me what they think. Tomorrow night I'm going to ask David. Do you actually endorse what Biden stands for and what he's doing? I'm prepping here, David. Or was it really just a matter of getting rid of the guy you didn't like? Which, again, it's an acceptable answer either way. It's not my problem. I didn't vote that way. I wouldn't. But how come we accept that? Why is it that we will stand on, our outrage about one guy, and then because of the damage that he can do, and go, this guy, I don't know anything about him, and vote for him? Well, couldn't it be said that he's could be doing damage that you don't even know about because you don't care enough to actually check into it?
Low information voter.
That's actually a really interesting point, David. I'll take that. Dig this. Biden has been running for president for 30 years. He's got no secrets. Fair point. So this, and I agree with you, because what I'm seeing from Biden in terms of the cabinet that he's put together suggests that he is a corporate stooge, that he is prepared to take us back and send our children off to go kill people in other lands for things like lithium and opium. We're in other words, hey, we're right back to where we started. As long as he's not being offensive, I'm willing to accept that, he's doing things in our country's name without our permission and with our money and don't really care. So if that's the case, then why be outraged about any of them? That's my real question. Why would you be outraged if you don't care about the stuff that's really, truly ugly that's being done? Rather than just a guy who's pissing you off all the time because he's a dick. You know what I mean? Yeah, I wish it was all the same, David. I really do. What's actually the same is we're about to step right back into the Middle East. I don't know if did you guys even see this? I want to see raise a show of hands in the room here. Anybody see that another Middle East deal with Trump at the helm was signed yesterday between
Number 4.
between Morocco and Israel?
Number 4.
That is the fourth one. And I've seen people go, oh, well, he didn't have anything to do with it, and these really aren't peace deals. Yes, he did, to the same extent that you would say that if somebody else was in charge and it was done on his watch, that he was responsible. So don't fucking do that. That's bullshit, and I hate that crap. You know, you can't cherry pick what you're going to give the guy credit or blast him for when it's done on his watch. So has any of you even seen that? 4 deals that no one else has been able to make. You know, and you can argue with me all day about whether or not he actually made. I don't care. It was done on his watch. Nobody else has been able to do it. 4. We're talking about countries that didn't, up until very recently, even accept Israel as a country, didn't want to acknowledge their existence. Now they've got air travel back and forth between them and Israel. You know, between what was the first country? It wasn't Yemen, was it? Where it was like the very was it? No, it wasn't SA. No. But it was one of the, and I'm sure, you know, somebody can find it. But for the very first time, there was like, we're opening up our airport to Israel. And it's like, wow, that's huge. The only air travel we used to have to Israel was to drop bombs on it, you know. So
the other factor we're looking at here is there's also an economic benefit to this.
That's right.
Because they're also doing a trade.
Well, and that's what he did. Rather than going, hey, you guys need to play nice and stop pointing your guns at each other like we've been trying to do since the freaking 60s. Instead, he went, wouldn't you guys all like to get rich? Here's how you get rich. You stop pointing your guns at each other and instead point your merchants to one another. You know, point your manufacturing to one another. Point your exports at one another. That's how you do it. You know, who gives a shit what their religion is on the other end? You want to make their money or not? You know, you really want to get involved with that country and have some say in it? Drive their economy. You know, and that's essentially the kinds of deals that were made. And so is anybody going to accept this, you know, that hates the man? No, of course not. So, again, one of those things that is, well, we're not going to give, you know, when you see the alphabet soup press, well, we can't really give them, you know, this is not really a peace deal. It really hasn't been worked on that long. 4. He's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize twice, and, you know, we had another president that was nominated before he even took office for, we liked his haircut, I guess. He had a good haircut, so we got the Nobel Haircut Peace Prize. And then he goes and authorizes drone strikes. You know, 20,000, and then, extrajudicial. It didn't require any sort of approval from Congress. Peace Prize for that. And then also the execution and murder. You know, we hunted down and murdered an American citizen on foreign soil without a warrant, without even arresting him and bringing him back for trial. There was no due process, but we gave him, you know, the Haircut Peace Prize. Anyway, this... To me, maybe let's see what you think. I've been doing all the talking here, Dustin. I think that, to me, what I see is, again, a country, a people that are so consumed with what something looks like that substance really isn't all that important.
Well, yeah, that tends to be the issue, and I think it's become more common through social media. So since the internet come about with the transfer of information back and forth, everything comes at you quick. And I think most people are usually looking at politics, are usually looking at it from the surface, and it's usually an emotional reaction. So, as you can see, I think the media has kind of figured out how to hold those levers pretty well. So if you're low information and you're just taking everything from the surface, it's gonna, you know, the media is going to kind of push you in the direction that they want you to go, and you're going to suffice to that. So to me, it doesn't come as a surprise. where I kind of come into the concerns is how to try and bridge those divides and have some universal understanding. And when you have people basically make it impossible to even have a conversation because they look at the media as basically gospel. So you're interfering with their faith. You're questioning the existence.
Unless it's Fox News or CNN.
Yes.
Then those guys are the liars. It's like, what the hell is wrong with you? You don't realize that you're being sold something to, right? I mean, they put a nice shiny label on it for you.
It just depends.
Unbelievable.
Oh, conservative. Let me box that up and put that over here. Oh, you're liberal. Let's go over here. Give you that package. This has got your name on it. And go ahead.
That's pretty good. So
it's like I've had many you see some of my debates that I usually start into, and it's one of those things where you kind of know someone has kind of bit off on that, and they've taken it as a religious context, or they've taken into it as part of their faith because they do not want to. Well, they're either going to be extremely hyperbolic and throw a lot of ad hominem at you and get a little upset, and go through like a word salad slaughter and just attack, or they just don't want to talk about it, and that's where you know somebody or basically questioning the existence of God, of their faith. In politics, for a lot of people, is a replacement to their faith. And that's kind of how at least my side of it, that's how I see it, is if they either get overly agitated real quick or they don't want to have a discussion, they're looking at it from a subjective, faith-based point of view, not an objective point of view. And that's where we need to kind of bring that universality, is you have to start bringing objectivity back into the discourse. Not subjectivity will just turn everyone against each other.
Well, and this is actually too, I want to show you, I'm going to put up on the screen what David just said, speaking as subjective. And this is part of the conversation I'm interested in having with David tomorrow night. The U.S. recognized Morocco's claim to colony of Western Sahara. That was a deal cut with Morocco to recognize Israel, the American empire reaching overseas to sell out the aspirations of liberty for a group of Africans. White supremacy continues to try and exert hegemony over the African continent through its puppets. So my question is, that sounds okay. I will accept the premise if I can see some evidence of those claims. Now, that's going to be tough to cough up, because when you use a term like white supremacy, it is not objective. The entire theoretical, I can't even call it a theoretical model, because you can't prove it or falsify it. It's really, you just either have to accept it or you don't. There isn't any epistemology that goes with it that supports that idea. Mm-hmm. So but again, I would absolutely say, okay, David, let's see where you get this information. Let's see if we can put that together. Is that really what's going on? And if it is, then we need to be outraged at that as well. Yes. So that's to your point, is that, there's a great deal of subjectivity that's going on. And this comes from that postmodernist, school of thought that basically says, we don't have to prove it. Science is wrong, because science actually uses a methodology to prove something. And so what we want to do is take the result that we're looking for and then reverse engineer it to fill in the gaps to support it. Rather than saying, here's a guess, we're going to actually put things together to see if it leads to supporting that guess, rather than the other way around. So
pointed in that direction.
That's definitely something that we need to work on as people, because when you interject stuff like that, for some people, and again, I want to make it very clear, I haven't disregarded what David just said at all. So what I'm saying is that there has to be some way that we can support this idea. You interject the U.S. empire and white supremacy. I want to see where, I think it's probably going to be easier to prove that the U.S. is some sort of an empire than it is that these things have something to do with white supremacy. Right. So, because there is a way to objectively observe one thing and no way to objectively observe the other.
Correct.
So, go ahead.
No, it's usually I see this in many conversations related to a lot of things. When we talk about subjectivity and concerning a lot of critical race theory, for example, we see that seems to be the topic, because there's a lot of different critical theories. Critical race theory seems to be the apple pie of America right now. And when we're talking in discussions, various discussions, when you see these terms thrown out of white supremacy or white colonization, and me and you have had this private conversation concerning a lot of the origins of this. When we come into a subjective situation with it, it gets complicated because it kind of blankets, well, it kind of cancels things out for an actual conversation. It doesn't make sense because it's like, well, this is this, so accept it, or you are a part of it, and that's an absolute. You can't have a conversation with an absolute. That's not nonsense.
It's also kind of tough
to have discourse. You're going to have to have at least a little bit of flexibility.
Well, especially when
again.
Go ahead.
It's too binary. It's very binary. For the moment.
Well, and especially when it's like, I get to say that this thing exists, that it is, because I say so. Not because there is any real way to support it, to falsify it, or prove it. That's scientific method, which is, it applies to forensic thinking, which is like interpreting history. Yes. Interpreting history, that's a forensic science. So to say that these things exist, and I'm going to go over tomorrow night. I'm really looking forward to talking to David about these things because, again, I want to make sure everybody understands I do not reject anything out of hand, ever. If I don't like the way it sounds, then I want to ask questions. I don't simply say that's bullshit. I'm not that kind of an authority to know. What I can't tell you what you believe is right or wrong. What I'm saying is that observationally, there is a way to find our way to subjective or objective realities. Objective truths rather than purely subjective ones. And so it's actually it's an old question and it's been answered many times. I think what ends up happening, like anything else, is that humanity goes through growth spurts. We go through periods of enlightenment and regression. And in order to get to enlightenment, we have to go through regression. We have to, again, test subjectivity. We have to say, there really is no consequence to any of this. So why should we put our faith in the outcomes of any sort of objective scrutiny of something like white supremacy is a good example. So,
yes.
In any case, and David's coming up with some great stuff here. And again, actually, David, why don't we talk about this tomorrow night? This particular subject, I think this is pretty good because there's a lot of that. I'm seeing the objectivity. There's been a claim to a colony of Western Sahara. That deal was cut with Morocco to recognize the American, recognize Israel, the American empire reaching overseas to sell out the operation, blah, blah, blah. That's what you originally said. Now he's actually posting news articles. But again, what does this news article say and what doesn't it? This is my concern, is that we can read this. Israel and Morocco have agreed to normalize relations as President Donald Trump in his final weeks in office announced the fourth Arab-Israeli agreement in 4 months on Thursday. In related major policy shift, the United States agreed to recognize Morocco's claim over the long-disputed Western Sahara region as part of the deal. I don't know the history of it, so it's like, okay, why was it disputed? How come it is that Morocco wanted it? What are their, I don't know anything about it, so why should I accept that on its surface? Again, I'm not saying it isn't true. I'm saying that I can't say that it is or say that it isn't. But one of the things that I did notice that it doesn't say anything in it about white supremacy or empires.
True.
So
there's also some there. We can't assume, right? You can't assume that that's what it's about.
No, and I don't want to. Instead, I want to have a discussion to see if we can figure out where those things play in. Yeah. Because again, David has life experiences. Jerry Ducassi down here, actually my friend Jerry, also has experiences that I haven't. So for me to say you guys are wrong is absolutely the most, that it's not only insulting, but it's so dishonest. I cannot decide what your life experience looks like. So instead, I want to discuss it. You know what I mean? And I think that you were talking earlier about bridging that gap, being able to say, that objectively, these are the things that we can find that we agree on, brings people together rather than saying, you're all full of shit. And if you think this way, you're a insert pejorative here. You know what I mean? And we see that a lot on social media. You said earlier that you thought that social media kind of empowers people to make those kind of divisions even worse. You know,
it created a large, it's like an amplifier, basically. It's projected it out much larger.
and that was to my point where I was saying that that we tend to be these days, for whatever reason, people who are more concerned about the way something looks on the surface than what lives beneath the surface. You know, the complexities that go with it. And actually, I never did finish the point about my dad.
Oh yeah.
I have come to recognize that because we live in, you said the speed of information, it comes at us really fast. How many people are as much of a nerd as I am to where, okay, I want to know more about that, and I'll sit here half the day reading about it so that I have a more informed opinion? Most people don't. Most people don't have time. Most people just aren't interested. In fact, when you were saying it, I was thinking of this, and I'm actually, Jerry, I'm gonna address you here in a second. When you were talking about that, I was thinking about, like, it's almost like checking the sports scores. Hey, let's see what those Democrats are doing today. You know, let's see what the score is for the Republican game. You know what I mean? It's almost like, you know, you're just checking in on your teams. How the teams do today. You know, when the Super Bowl is the big election every 4 years. You know what I mean? So you check in on the scores, you know, you look at, you know who some of the players are, you know, you read some of the stats, but do you really understand the game? No. You know? So Jerry just said that as a brown person in the U.S., in a predominantly white area, I don't see white supremacy as being the big problem. The left likes to place blame on. Then again, I don't live in the South. I only have my perception. And again, this is why, Jerry, I think you make a good point. Which is why making blanket statements saying that this is the way the world actually is, and if you don't see it, it's because you're participating in it. You know, that's one of the claims of critical theory.
Correct.
You know, and because it requires no proof, because it doesn't require any sort of rigor, any process to arrive at a reasoned conclusion, we can simply say that and go, yes, you are. And that's really kind of what it ends up being. So,
Christian, what is similar to that? Can you think of that? What is similar in that thought process? Like fundamental religion.
Oh, well, that's why I liken it to religion all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I call it a non-theistic religion.
Yeah, and that's it. Politics is a non-theistic religion, but then again, you do have your deities. You know, you got your Trumps and your Bidens, you got your Obamas, you have your Reagans. Yep. You know, you have your Kennedys. You know, there are definitely, you know, at least demigods. You know, we might be able to go that far, right?
You can call them demigods. Yeah.
And so this is evidenced as to, you know, to circle back around to where we started here. We have the major media outlets, the people that when they're checking in on the sports scores between the game between the Democrats and Republicans in the big lead up to the Super Bowl election, you know, of 2020, they hear somebody said something about Biden and a scandal. What was that? So I'm going to tune in and see. All of these stations have the same tear sheet, and they're all saying there's absolutely no proof of any wrongdoing. It's all BS. You know, it's all ridiculous. We really don't have to report on this. And then social media, the big social media comes out and says, we're not going to have anything to do with this. I don't know if you saw this or not. The Associated Press said that they wouldn't give such ridiculous conspiracy theories any space. They were not going to reprint any of it.
Yep.
And I'm thinking from the New York Post, you know, and so people, again, part of this conditioning for, you know, for their teams, for their religion, is to reject a source. Well, that source says this, and that makes it crap. Well, how do you know? You didn't even read it.
That happens quite a lot.
Well, and that's why do you remember, and I'll see if I can find it here, on the tank a couple of days ago, I posted a cartoon. And that cartoon was representations of different kinds of hyperbole. And the other one, there was two of them, and another one was representations of ad hominem.
Yes.
And there's different forms of ad hominem. There's actually four different ad hominem fallacies. And, you know, essentially ad hominem is ignore the argument, attack the arguer instead, make the arguer look bad, and then claim victory over the argument. But this is the one here, and I'm going to share this, that really stood out to me, because this is one of those I'm going to go after the source rather than what the source is arguing kinds of things. Let me share this with you. This is a good book. You should read it. I heard it's full of racism. I just finished reading it, and your accusation is unsubstantiated. Of course, you as a white dog wouldn't be able to understand the concept of racism. That is ad hominem.
Yep.
You know, and essentially that is a rejection of source because of, you know, whatever characteristic that you want to attribute it to. So this is also part of the wars that we see here, you know, between the two religions and between the, I would say, you know, how do we describe, how does the press fit into a religion? You know, the bishops, the, you know, yeah, the high priests of information, or I mean, seriously, I think that's probably the best way. High priests and priestesses of propaganda, because again, they're selling a product.
You know what's really scary?
You know,
Scary, Christian. Yeah, but what's really concerning, Christian, is that there's it's been proven that many of our elected politicians, if they get their source from the mainstream media, if they don't understand what's going on, even in the government, they're watching what they're basically taking advice from them, and that is kind of concerning.
Well, this supports my argument that I've been making, that, you know, when people say the media is just an extension of the DNC, and I'm going, no, it's not. They're far more powerful than the DNC. You know, the Democratic National Party, these people do what the press says. It doesn't go the other way around. And again, I think it can be evidenced by, I could argue the premise. That's my premise. And my argument would be, could Chuck Schumer destroy CNN? Probably not. Could CNN destroy Chuck Schumer?
Overnight.
In minutes. In minutes. Could CNN and others like them, like-minded, that are owned by the same conglomerates, which is who owns these companies, could they influence the outcome of an election by hiding information that is either positive or negative, depending on who their chosen horse is in that race? So shouldn't we be concerned about that when we're, you know, I have myself trained very well in this regard, though. I hear information and go, wait a minute, I'm not going to react to that. What is it? What's missing from it? What are they really trying to say? What's actually in there that doesn't sound right? Let me pull this apart and find out what I can find out about it. Which is, what's funny about that is the essence of critical theory, the critical philosophy, originally. It was called deconstructionism. The idea was to take anything you believe and tear it into as many pieces as you can to see if you have reasons to believe it as you do. These are very useful philosophical concepts. The idea of postmodernism is there's some really good ideas in it. Foucault had some great ideas. Derrida had some really good ideas. And the ideas that were useful in their philosophy was to look at an institution, for example, and say, we kind of accept that this institution is however it is that we've been raised to feel about it. It's good, it's bad, we should be patriots, we should be against it. You know, like how many people can tell you why it is that they either support or don't Israel? Very few. It's a really complex subject. So Foucault and Derrida in particular, his idea was to go, okay, is it actually as good or is it as bad? What is it really? Where does it come from? How come people feel this way? Let's tear it apart. And so this is what I spend most of my time doing. You know? So that's why when you and I were discussing postmodernism and cultural Marxism, I was saying, well, yeah, those things are real, but they're kind of offshoots of very sound ideas. You know, I would argue, let's start with Marxism, because it's kind of the where you got Marxism, and then I talked to you about Antonio Gramsci and Gramsci's ideas of hegemony and what hegemony actually means and the way it works. I could actually bring some of that up here too in my philosophy research, because it actually kind of leads to exactly what we're talking about. So I'll encapsulate a little bit here. Then there was, that's right. Oh God, Pierre Bourdieu and his idea of Bardeux of bubbles. Gramsci was saying that essentially power will always seek power, and it will always seek to convince you to give them more power, and it will always seek to convince you that them taking power is right and righteous by their own might. And this is kind of, this is where you combine that idea of hegemony with Marx's idea of oppressors and the oppressed, wage slaves, that kind of thing. You combine those two things and you go, wow, you put those two together and wow, one supports the other, and it doesn't, not directly. Then you go it doesn't. And then you go to Derrida. And Derrida's, I like Derrida. Behind every problem are complex and nuanced solutions. In other words, nothing's black and white. Let's find out what all the shades in between really are. Critical theory actually came from, as you know, because you're a James Lindsay fan, what was originally known as the Frankfurt School of Thought, which was actually all of the Marxist professors, Marxist teachers, the people that supported Marxist ideals in Weimar Germany. And they said, well, it's not working. His ideas, stuff that he talked about weren't working. So let's move to the U.S. Let's actually create, it wasn't originally called the Frankfurt School. I think it was a school of complex moral issues or something like that. In any case, so you combine the oppressor and the oppressed, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, that lifelong struggle between power and those who are subservient to power, and also Marx's idea of false consciousness. False consciousness is the idea that oppressed people aren't capable of acting on their own behalf or in their own best interest because they have been convinced that this is what they are supposed to be doing. So they're when it's like a form of conditioning, brainwashing. I am a slave and that's what I'm supposed to be, so I can't act in my own best interest. That was false consciousness. That's Marx's idea. Take Gramsci's idea of hegemony. Power is always going to seek power. We will find any possible way. And again, to a certain degree, he's right. But all of these ideas hit a wall, and that wall is falsification. You can't take it through a process to prove it. It's not possible. So then you get to basically Derrida, who is saying that all of these problems are really nuanced. So let's and then Foucault, let's actually break them all down. Let's tear them apart. Let's deconstruct all of these ideas. And then when you leave out the argument as to whether or not you're a conventionalist or you're a foundationalist, which essentially is the requirement of objectivity. When you leave that stuff out, you come up with, well, because Trump, because white supremacy, because racism, because men hate women, because the patriarchy. And those things are designed to end an argument rather than have a discussion on the argument's merits. So that's where all that comes from. So we are conditioned to this. So now we live in sound bites. We have a press that's like, we're going to Orange Man bad. We are going, as the most powerful entities on the face of the earth, we're going to pick a side, and we're going to ensure you don't hear anything, that you don't share anything other than what is necessary for our horse to win this race. Now, again, that is also subjective. I'm saying that I can put together some of these pieces and make that sound like a pretty good argument, but I don't have enough pieces to prove it. I'd have to have some of these people in charge in front of me and get them to cough up the goods in order to prove it. So this is why I go, this is what it looks like, but is it what it really is? I don't know.
So it's all concerning that so many people would openly rely on this information as empirical truth.
Well, and that's the thing. What's empirical? Empirical is the requirement for objectivity. Empiricism requires foundation. It's a foundationalist idea where there's got to be some objectivity here. You have to prove it.
I think the confusion is that most people, when they follow these sources of information, is that they feel that is the empirical truth is that source. Period.
Mhm.
There is no question.
Well,
They say sex. That is it. And it's. I just find that kind of odd that no one would ever question it. So, case in point, since October, since the New York Post released that information concerning Hunter Biden's laptop, it was pushed and suppressed. And all of a sudden now it's released in a somewhat ham-fisted way. Did anyone? Most of these people act like, oh, here it is. Well, no, this is 2 months ago. This was reported, and there was sufficient evidence, though nothing proven at that point. It was worthy of a discussion. Oh, well, that was something else. That was.
This is all it's all a Trump campaign effort to destroy Joe Biden before the election, and again, that's kind of, the way, and so this is really cool. This is a good way to circle back around to the information I wanted to share. And that is that first of all, I just said that people aren't, Marx's idea of false consciousness is people aren't capable of acting in their own best interest. Well, I would say that that's not true. We have probably the freest, Western culture is the freest, collectively than we've ever been in the history of the world. Now, we can argue exactly how free we are and how free we aren't. But in terms of historically, can we put up a mirror to it and say that right now we have greater liberty to act in our own best interest than we've ever had before? I think that's arguably true. We could probably find that objectively. So that being the case, why is it that's probably why news outlets that have a race to win, that have a Super Bowl to play in. These are the people that run the sports books, if you will. I love this sports and religion analogy when it comes to politics. This is pretty good, right? So we also have, to your point, Richard Painter is one of this guy does not like Trump, never did like Trump, probably never will like Trump. He's saying that there needs to be a special counsel to conduct this investigation because, again, a special counsel gets those powers right through the next administration, unless that administration wants to fire him. And we all know how Adam Schiff feels about that, or do we? Remember how concerned that he was that Trump might fire the special counsel? Remember all that? Oh, he's going to fire Mueller, and we need to be prepared to impeach him for that, and blah, blah, blah. Now he's flip-flopped, of course, but let's go back to Mr. Painter here. Even one of President Trump's harshest critics has joined the chorus calling for a special counsel to investigate President-elect Joe Biden's son. Lawyer Richard Painter, who served as the chief ethics lawyer for President George W. Bush, has told the New York Times on Friday that Hunter Biden probe needs to be completely independent of the incoming administration. Can I get a hallelujah? Do any of you disagree with that? Yeah, can I see what I mean? It's hey, I'm proselytizing. Can I get a hallelujah?
We're here now.
Yeah, we're playing for Team Republican. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. That should not be investigated by someone appointed by the president any more than if one of his cabinet members is accused of something or is his national security advisor. Isn't that interesting? Hunter Biden, 50, unexpectedly disclosed Wednesday that he is under investigation for potential tax fraud in Delaware, where the Post exclusively revealed in October that the FBI has seized a laptop containing his emails and other records from a Wilmington repair shop. Some of the emails detailed his overseas business dealings, including in China and the Ukraine, where he served on the board of an energy company that paid him a reported $50,000 a month. How do I get a gig like that? Oh, that's right. I just need to be the son of a vice president. Painter, who has said he quit the Republican Party in opposition to Trump, about whom he wrote a book entitled American Nero, told USA Today that the scandal surrounding Hunter was a golden opportunity, actually, for Joe Biden. Obviously, you never want to see a family member in trouble, but this is a way for Joe Biden to say, I'm not the one who should be making decisions, and neither should anyone, including the Attorney General, who reports to me. Remember how, Barr is the personal attorney for the president. He's acting in the president's best interest and not the country. those same voices, a couple of them are actually here in this chat room right now, didn't have anything to say when when Barr went, no, I'm not going to investigate this. He's actually kicked the president's teeth in a few times in the last few months, kind of showing that, no, I really kind of always felt that he was a pretty ethical guy. And again, I'll tell you right now, if he wasn't able to find anything in this election that he found stinky, I'm going to lean towards, again, I remain skeptical, but I'm going to lean towards what it is that Barr was saying. Former Manhattan federal prosecutor and conservative commentator Andrew McCarthy wrote in the National Review that although special counsel should be avoided when practical, the Hunter Biden case was a classic situation that called for one. There are unique challenges for the Justice Department in conducting an investigation of the incoming president's son, which involves some suspicious business activities to which Joe Biden has been connected, McCarthy wrote. Clearly, the concern would be that a Biden Justice Department could bury that probe. This leads me to, of course, we were just talking about Schiffhead. Hey, during the whole thing, I called him Schiffhead. I don't know how anybody takes that guy seriously. It kills me too because neither.
I don't know how people can vote for him. He's one of the most transparent politicians I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, he is. You know he's full of shit. I mean, you don't have to question it at all.
I mean, you can sit there and watch him on camera. Go back 2 weeks ago and watch him contradict him. Basically, he's lying to himself, and you're like, is anyone else watching this, or is it just me? This guy's horse shit.
Actually, Brian Hobson just showed up, another friend of mine. Hey, Brian, how you doing, man? Brian has historically been on the anti-Trump side of things, which again I don't, and I hope, Brian, that when you've brought those things to the tank, I've always treated you fairly in terms of my responses to some of that stuff. All I've ever asked of anybody is that they quantify their position rather than I just think the guy's a piece of shit. Well, okay, fine. But beyond that, if you are going to make accusations and such, like Schiff has, and we're going to get to that now, I just hope that, that my efforts in being skeptical but not partisan are obvious. There are things that I have supported Trump on. There's things that I think he's man, what an asshat. He lost this election because he's an asshat, man. Actually, he's even less than that. He's an ass helmet. What could be more useless than a helmet for your ass? Anyway,
yeah.
I'm going to switch over here to this. Adam Schiff flip-flops on particular counsels after Durham appointment. Representative Adam Schiff is soon referred to as soon as referred to for laws to guard then special counsel Robert Mueller to make sure that his Russia investigation would proceed unimpeded, however, is now railing in opposition to legal professional Common William Barr's appointment of a particular counsel to proceed investigating the FBI's actions while in the early levels of that same Russia probe. Barr had just lately introduced that previous to November's election, he named Connecticut U.S. legal professional John Durham as particular counsel for the investigation of the Russia probe that Durham was already main. As a U.S. attorney, Durham is a topic to being relieved of his duties when President Joe Biden takes workplace. His investigation may be shut down by the subsequent administration. As particular counsel, nevertheless, Durham would get pleasure from a level of added independence, as he may solely be fired by a lawyer common or somebody appearing in that capability. Barr is utilizing the particular counsel regulation for objective that it was not meant to precede a politically motivated investigation lengthy after Barr leaves the workplace. This is what I'm talking about right here. Is that, well, wait a minute, this is politically motivated. That's not what it was meant for. So we spent 3 years hearing about Russia. We spent, this guy, our president, was supposed to be an actual asset of the Russian intelligence apparatus. But that wasn't politically motivated? Are you kidding? So, and then he, again, this is the same guy that said he had absolutely irrefutable proof that he never produced. Kind of like the president's completely, I'm sorry, man, it's just what he dragged us through with this, release the Kraken, and I have proof that I actually won and that there's been all this fraud. We haven't seen it, man. We've seen a lot of things that need to be investigated, but he really never He never coughed up the goods. So I'm going to be equally as critical. You know, we had this. Here's actually. I know there are some people that have joined us here this evening that had, you know, that were actually upset and incredulous that turned out that Mueller wasn't able to prove, you know, that there wasn't any evidence that Trump was a Russian asset. How could you be upset about that? I've brought this up before.
Why would we want to know that? Well, it's not that we want. Why would we be? You don't want the president of the United States to be a Russian asset.
No, but people were pissed off that it turned out he wasn't. And then they fought against it. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. He is so. He is. You know.
There are people still today.
Oh no, people still do it. And one of them happens to be he who will not be named.
Yes.
And I remember one of my arguments with him where he said the only reason that it came out that way is because of Barr. Barr protected him. Barr didn't prosecute when he got the Mueller report. And I went, Barr wouldn't have anything to do with an impeachment. That's all we needed to know. There wasn't anything to go after him for because they didn't say, oh, wow, look what we got here. We're going to draw up articles of impeachment. Barr would have nothing to do with that. In fact, they tried impeaching him on a couple of non-starter things that just weren't going to fly no matter what. Obstruction of Congress? And how did they respond to obstruction of Congress? This is something the Supreme Court's going to have to decide. We're going to make a case. Nope, we're going to impeach you for it instead. Well, wait a minute. Let's just take it to the Supreme Court. Nope. You obstructed Congress. So I started looking, I was going, is obstruction of Congress even a thing? Well, yeah, it is. And you know how you respond to that? Is that you take it to the Supreme Court. That's exactly what Holder did under the Obama administration when Holder refused to provide to Congress with evidence and testimony regarding the Fast and Furious gun running scandal. And they took it to the Supreme Court, and ultimately, to his credit, Holder complied with the rules of the court, and he provided that information. But he stuck his heels in it for 2 years first. So why did we impeach this guy for it? I don't get it. Well, we did because everything else sucked. We tried, and it all fell apart because Schiff said he had the goods. Swalwell said he had the goods. Nobody had any goods. There wasn't any. Then we find out after the fact that we actually have an attorney, an FBI attorney, who has now been prosecuted successfully and sentenced for tampering with evidence in order to get the FISA warrant in the first place.
Yes.
I guess none of that really mattered much.
You know, it's funny. Maybe this may be silly, but when I think about the process of from trying to get the FISA warrant and the whole 3 years, 3.5 years, it's almost like one of those like you had this little speck of dust. All they needed that speck of dust, and it was kind of like start this chain reaction, and they got it, and it just like escalated and started going on and on and on and on and on. And it was kind of crazy to think that it was one little thing. I mean, it was minute, and that's all it took to turn this into a very expensive, long
turd hunt.
Yeah, it was
turd hunt. They were hunting for turds. Yes, and I will be completely honest. If we see that this Hunter Biden investigation turns into a turd hunt, I'll be like just as pissed off that you wasted our time and money. You know, I don't care who wins the horse race. It doesn't matter. What matters is what's being done in my name, what's being done with my money. You know, and if you guys are politicking and you're fucking around with my money in our name, I'm going to be pissed. I don't care which one of you wants to go to the goddamn Super Bowl. You know, I don't care which one of you needs new outfits for your high priests, you know, and that you're trying to raise money so that you can put a new pipe organ in, you know, for the congregation. I'm sorry. None of that means anything. And I think that, again, we need to stop just accepting this crap from these people, you know, based on which team we want to play for.
Yes.
You know, people are all angry at this or they're happy about that. And the fact of the matter is that their strings are getting pulled to put them in either place. It really doesn't matter. You know, this is a Republican investigation. No, it's not. Republicans just want to know the same thing that the Democrats would want to know. Is this real? Did this guy break laws? This has nothing. Remember, I think it was you and I last week who I was reading an article that was written about AOC. And the very first thing that it said was AOC, the liberal senator from, and I was going, I don't care. Stop saying she's liberal. I don't care. I don't need to, she says plenty of stupid shit, so we don't need to make up any other reasons to attack her. Just leave that part out. Say what it is that she has to say. Don't say that she's a progressive or a liberal or part of the squad. Why do you care? You don't. The idea is to sell papers, and it sells papers if it's outrageous and pisses people off. See what I mean? That damn liberal. Stop that. Stop labeling people, for Christ's sake. You want to take control of the country back? Stop doing that. Stop accepting it is the information that's being sold to you that does it. So we've got again. I wanted to talk to Jerry actually here. He brought up that he does. Jerry actually lives. Don't you live? You live pretty close to here. I know you're a Bay Area guy, Jerry. I know you. I think Brian is.
That's funny because when you say that, it's
I lost you.
in context. This is the same context on. They're telling the story.
I lost about 2/3 of what you said. Your camera is like, you have Wi-Fi. You're on Wi-Fi, huh? You're going to need to get like a 200-foot cable and run it upstairs and plug it into the router. Because it drops out a lot.
Or I'll just go up to my other computer.
Well, you could do, but your background is so freaking cool in there. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. You saw my other background. It would be sad. You would not. No one would like to see that.
Well, actually, when I move into Studio B over here, the background's going to be nothing but black and red acoustic foam tiles. In any case, I was actually going to point out something that Jerry said. We do live in the San Francisco Bay Area. Didn't you lived in Sacramento or something? Didn't you, Dustin? I thought you did. Or have you always been Utah, Ohio, something Utah, right?
No, I used to come out every year. Yeah, I'm in Utah, but I used to come out to the Bay Area.
That's what it was.
Every year.
Come out for Barfest and such.
Yeah.
So the Bay Area is actually really.
I know a lot of people.
The Bay Area is really kind of a really interesting cross section of humanity. But one of the things that is really constant about it is that it takes a hell of a lot of money to live here, and I mean a lot. It's far higher than the national averages to live here. I believe the median, a couple of years ago, the median cost of a home here was $650,000. I think it's more like $778 now, but I could be wrong. Which, $650,000 in Texas gets you ungodly amounts of property and is, a giant house. It's really, it doesn't go very far here. So what's interesting to me about that is that the San Francisco Bay Area is supposed to be one of the centers for progressive ideas, enlightenment, where we do something, with our, where we stand for ending income inequality, homelessness, better education. We have California is, I do believe, the first highest. It's bypass. And again, I should probably just pull this information up. When I did the last research on it, because I put together a video called "California is a Shithole," California's was the #1 state in the country in income inequality. Now we had the highest number of homeless, the highest rate of being converted from people who were employed and had a place to live to people who didn't. I pointed out that our opportunity, the scale of opportunity for people coming to California, is ranked dead last, number 50 in the country for opportunity. But at the same time, it's the 5th largest economy in the world. So what does that actually suggest? That all the money rises to the top. It doesn't make too many stops on the way either. And we have had no party opposition, no Republican Party opposition in Sacramento in about a decade. Has any real substance to it. San Francisco elected a very progressive mayor, big shock, and a attorney general who saw things the same way, where they needed to decriminalize a number of things. The crime rate in San Francisco is absolutely out of control. The homeless rate in San Francisco has gone up. There's actually an app. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but it is an app that tracks the human shit and where it is on what sidewalks in San Francisco. And now they've added an element to it where people can take a picture of the shit and then put a GPS pin on it, so you can see where all the shit in San Francisco is. Were you aware of that? It's actually an app, and I can tell you that I've been there since all of this took place, and you'll need that app if you want to go there and not step in it.
Crazy.
There was San Francisco had a very progressive, forward-thinking needle exchange idea a number of years ago that kind of morphed into something that it was never really meant to be. I actually kind of supported the idea of, look, man, if you're going to have people shooting up, let's try and keep the communicable disease down in that population, and let's say, hey, bring us your needles, no question asked, we'll give you clean ones. I didn't have a problem with that. It kind of makes sense. It's a public health idea. It's actually gotten so bad that they're saying that they had distributed over 1 million needles in 2017 and received back 40,000. So this is what yeah. The newly minted vice president was in charge of the prosecutions in this state as the state's attorney general. And under her watch, a great deal of this kind of stuff not only happened, but she found, at least to be totally fair, I dug into this. I don't like repeating stuff if I don't know about it. People said that she extended the sentences of inmates in order to continue, to make sure that they were able to, that they continued fighting fires in California, because a lot of inmates are firefighters, So she was able to somehow prevent them from being released. I don't know if it was extending their sentences. I think it was prevent them from being released. And to her credit, she claimed that she wasn't aware of it. When she found out that her office was doing this, she put a stop to it. Again, it rises to the top. Are you responsible for this or not? If you want to give somebody credit for something that their office did, you're also going to have to give them hell when their office did something inappropriate, impropriety. So, so again, this is the kind of thing that we keep hearing is the enlightened way. This is this is the home of the. There's no such thing as objective truth. We can identify as whatever we want to identify as. There's not going to be any consequences for these actions. It isn't the personal responsibility of criminals, but the way people are treated that turns them into criminals. We can actually see it right in front of us. These are the results. So some of these ideas I had originally thought were pretty good. And then you put them into, see, this is the thing about ideas. You can have these ideas, and until you put them into mechanical practice and practical application, and those things really need to be considered. I look around me and I see that a lot of these ideas are not considered.
But what about when the ideas are bad and you keep going? It's like it's obvious.
When what your argument is that there's no objective truth, then the ideas aren't bad. This is because this is the right way to do it. This is because white supremacy. This is because any number of reasons that don't require any sort of objective support. Then we put them into place, and it affects a lot of people. And then what ends up happening is that we see that the willingness to take responsibility for those disasters, it doesn't exist. It isn't there. In fact, even acknowledging them as failed policies, acknowledging that there were problems with them, and maybe we should just fix them. For example, I think, and I bring all this up because, again, California is a great example of the kind of thinking that we're discussing here that drives people to make very quick decisions based on one scrap of information. You earlier had said something about low information voters. Yeah. I think we should find a better way of phrasing that, because it's almost like it's a pejorative. That sounds insulting to me. You're a low information voter.
If you I do use it as a pejorative.
Do you? Okay, well, fine, and fair enough to that point. But again, what I'm trying to do is actually build some bridges here and just say, well, you're a low information voter, so you're an idiot, and that's why you voted that way, because that's the connotation. Just to simply say, how much information did you gather before you made your decision? And that's a fair question, and I'm not making an assumption that you didn't. It's a fair question. How much information did you gather? What drove your decision? The science is actually in on this. People vote for a president based on the way the president makes them feel, not based on anything the president's going to say.
I posted on the Skeptic Tank page something to that effect. With the
that's right. That's right. I saw that earlier. I loved it. Welcome to postmodernism.
And we're all going to vote on our feelings.
That's right. How we feel about it. This is the one with the most smiley faces.
Yeah, this was cute, and I feel bad for them, and well, we're going to vote for that, and that's why that was a joke. It's kind of silly.
So,
this is the most qualified one.
And the result is that on the other end of it, we end up with more homeless people. We end up with a huge income disparity. We have people that work in Silicon Valley. I think the average worker at Facebook made $261,000 a year and couldn't afford to live near where they work.
Isn't that insane?
That's completely nuts.
That's madness.
It is madness. Now, at the same time, I do not support the idea of forcing people to sell homes at lower prices than the market. I don't support any of that.
I wouldn't either.
No. But at the same time, there are people here who do. And what ends up happening is that like Elon Musk announced yesterday that he is leaving California and he's taking Tesla headquarters with him. Now he's not taking the converted plant that used to actually be a Toyota plant with him yet. But you saw it. I posted it a couple of days ago, and I had to retract it because I framed it improperly. I framed it as if he was taking Tesla manufacturing with him out of California, and he's not. So I took it down for that reason. I don't want to post stuff that's wrong. Right. But the point being is that Newsom came out and said, "Oh, this guy isn't going anywhere," and he went, "Oh, really?" See ya.
Elon Musk is the last guy I would play cards with. That guy, no.
Yeah, right. The governor versus Elon Musk. Talk about your WWE. There's a bout that we could probably predict the ending to. Jerry, actually, check it out. Jerry, you work for Symantec, if I remember correctly. He works for, I do believe they are the largest provider of antivirus and security software in the world. And he works for them, and he can't afford to live there. I bought my house out here where I live. I live out in the sticks, man. I love it out here.
You're west of the bay, right?
Yeah, and I live in
you're east of the bay.
way east, actually. Yeah, and I live like between a bunch of farms. It's so cool out here, man. I live in this beautiful gated.
Gilroy?
Yeah, Gilroy's about 30 minutes from here.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of still live in the middle of everything. Nothing's far. But to get out here, see, this is why I think, David, we're going to have a little chat tomorrow night about when you say shit that you mean and when you say shit that you don't. Oh, boy. Because if you're serious about that, I want to know why. In any case, I live between a bunch of farms. It's fantastic out here. It is really quiet. There's no city lights, so I can actually see the stars. But if I want to, to go to Kmart, it's 20 minutes that way. It's fantastic. I live in this beautiful gated community. We live right at the edge of the Sacramento River Delta, so we're surrounded by water. We have 4 lakes over here. It's really fabulous. As much as it costs me to live here, which is, again, well above the national average, it's really expensive. I couldn't afford to live in Silicon Valley either. That's, there's just no way. My same house would cost 5 times what I paid for it 50 miles to the west. Literally 5 times as much. Jerry says, this is good. You have to be married and both spouses will have Silicon Valley job or you roommate to make it. Mm-hmm. That's actually, Jerry, I think it's also safe to say that would stand true. Let's say you wanted to live in Walnut Creek and buy a home in Walnut Creek. Wouldn't it be something similar? I don't know how much you've looked at it, but real estate here is completely outrageous. in Walnut Creek, which is a beautiful town, you get about 2,500 square foot house, which is actually bigger than the median for California. I think California's median 1,600. So 2,500 is pretty big. Mine's 4,100 square feet. It's huge.
That's why I was going like, what? How do you afford 4,000 square feet?
Because I'm not in San Francisco, out there, it would cost, I think it's like, I want to say it's $1,100 a square foot or higher. And again, these numbers in my head come from when I did research 2 years ago for a video, so they could be wrong at this point. So, Jerry, so let's say you wanted to live in Walnut Creek, Jerry. I know you make a good living. I know what you do, and he's an engineer, and that's actually, it's one of the best paying jobs that you can get is working as a network software or security engineer. That's what I do, and to buy a house. Actually, David, now I'm actually putting together what it is you're talking about. So, but again, you're characterizing it as white supremacy. We'll get to that tomorrow night. Actually, that's a good thing we can bring up. So to buy a 2,500 square foot house in Walnut Creek that was built in probably the 1950s. To be fair, let's go into the 1960s. So, it's an older home. It's not going to have, most of the ones out there have been obviously remodeled. But we're still looking at about $1 million to $1.4 million for an average American home that's 2,400 square feet, 2,500, that's 50 years old. So when you're a police officer, you can't afford that. You're a teacher, you can't afford that. As a network engineer, I looked out there, I didn't want a house that small. And, I'm not going to spend $1 million for a house that small. It's insane. And that old. Mine's actually, it was pre-wired with Cat 5, and I got jacks everywhere. And there's the last house we had in Brentwood had a sprinkler system in it, for fires. This is really cool. To buy a 50-year-old house so that you can live close enough to make enough money to afford a $1 million 50-year-old small house doesn't make a great deal of sense to me.
No. It sounds like a terrible investment.
Well, actually, the investment's outstanding.
Well,
I'll tell you right now, man, 15% a year, around in equity. This is the place to buy a house. But I have to wonder how much longer that's going to last. Kim and I we have been discussing leaving California. I could sell my house, take the equity, pay off all my debt, buy another house with cash somewhere else.
You could move to Utah and take cash.
I looked in Utah.
You did? Where'd you live here?
No, I looked there.
Oh,
we were looking in the Salt Lake area, right out. Oh man, Taylorsville.
That's where I'm at. Taylorsville. But
that's where my brother currently lives.
Oh, your brother there?
Yeah, there's a big lake, and it's not the Salt Lake, but there's a big lake out there with these beautiful homes around it. And I was looking at those, and I'm going, my God, 4,800 square feet, fully appointed, right on the lake with with a 20,000 square foot lot for $600,000. Are you kidding?
Yeah, Saratoga Springs is what you're thinking.
That's it. That's what I'm talking about. We were looking at houses there, man, and oh my God, they're beautiful. And
that's a straight shot to Silicon Slopes, which is pretty much your market.
Hey, Martin, if you want to actually join in, I'll send you a link. You can pop in here. Martin just he said that.
Do you home from work?
I don't know. Actually, it's a good question. He says, "Oops." The Fairness Foundation of the liberal mind sees capitalism as unfair, and
he's right.
As far as using that metric goes, I'm sure.
He's using Jonathan Haidt's.
Jonathan Haidt, yeah. We're talking about the moral foundations, the 6 moral foundations, and the Fairness Foundation suggests that capitalism is unfair, and I think that's again one of those. Okay, well, I'd want to know where the unfairness is. Is it because there are poor people and there are rich people? I think life's unfair in that case, but see, I don't. I'd have to actually dig into that with him. He says he's still.
Well, here's a one to wrap your mind around. Think about this. When you look at a left to right scale on economy, so all the way left is communism, and you go all the way right, anarcho-capitalism. Why is it that there are so many people that are wanting to go left to something that's tried and true been a failure, and not want to go right to something that's never been done yet. You ever thought about that?
Well, I have, but at the same time, I think Martin's right in that it's really not a matter of whether or not it's, you could argue that let's just take Venezuela as a good example, and it's a good example because it was actually hailed as 21st century socialism. Bernie Sanders wrote, and I have the piece, and I don't know if I should read it. It's great stuff. He wrote
I've read
a
it.
piece,
I know what you're referring to.
an article talking about how the American dream is more alive in Venezuela and in Colombia and in Argentina than it is here. This is where you're going to find more people that are upwardly mobile, blah, 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 blah. And just like within 2 years, all those countries collapsed. The argument that I always hear is because somebody in Washington, I guess, doesn't want anybody to think socialism is good, so America intervenes to destroy their economies. I don't think anybody in Washington gives two shits whether or not we think socialism is good. I really don't. If you wanted to say that America intervened by squashing competition in the oil market, which to me is just deliciously ironic that Venezuela, these wonderful utopian socialist paradises, are oil-driven economies. That always that just gives me warm and fuzzy giggles. So then I would accept that. I'd be like, okay, that sounds more in line with something that I would believe that the U.S. did. Did the U.S. price fix against, to prevent, we actually did prevent Venezuela from selling their oil to Russia? Yep. Absolutely. Of course we did. We don't want Russia to have a stronghold that close to our own shores. At least that's the excuse that they use. Do I know anything deeper than that? No, I don't. That's the excuse. That's what I've heard. That's what I've read. Do I know that that's a fact? I have no idea. So, for me to get into foreign policy stuff, I have to actually go and study it. I don't know. So in any case, there's always a reason that for whatever reason, socialism failed somewhere. And that, it's not a reason of socialism itself. It's always something else. It's an outside force. Well, then outside forces, inside forces, it still failed. And so far every time. So then what we do is
what wasn't done right.
Okay, what's done right? So what we do. No, that's my question. Because what we end up doing then is redefining socialism to mean something else. Socialism is fire departments, libraries, and police departments are examples of socialism. Where are they examples of socialism? Right here. No, they're not. Welfare is not socialism. Government programs are not social. That's not what socialism is. They are provided services that taxpayers pay for. They aren't. I love this. Where it's it's democratic socialism. Okay, explain that. Well, this is where instead of having a capitalist that makes all the money off of your labors, it's, everybody in the collective runs that company. And I go,
so how's that going to work?
Yeah, how's that? Yeah, let's see how well that worked out. Well, they haven't done it. Yes, they actually have done that plenty of places. And when it is done voluntarily, it actually seems to work, in some places and in some cases. Where American companies. Yeah, go ahead.
You're right. The whole concept of communism and socialism works on a voluntary basis. It does.
Well, sure. So did voluntary communism. It worked out great when you had communes. That's what those were.
Yes. But the problem is the minute you have people who do not want to participate in that kind of economical system, that's where the government gets and forces them to do that.
Well, and so this is always my argument. It's like, okay, that's a great idea. And you're saying that all this needs to be owned by the people. Well, there's 340 million of the people. So which ones of those are going to take over and run, say, Amazon? Well, all of them. How?
Yeah.
How? So we're going to divide up all that between 340 million people, which actually puts the company itself in the hole. You know what I mean? So, but let's say that's not the case. Who gets to be the boss? Oh, there are no bosses. So nobody makes decisions. Well, yeah, we vote on those decisions.
Wow.
So again,
I can see efficiency going south pretty quick here.
Well, not only efficiency, but effectiveness. How long are you guys going to debate on this stuff? And see, this is what happens. This is actually, I think it's reflective of any type of government, really. Whether it be socialism or any other kind, is that you end up with these stalemates because the idea is to try and provide services and try and provide for the greatest number of people, to be beneficial to the largest number of people, right? So trying to put this into action, though, so somebody with no education gets to own this company versus somebody with tons of education and experience who owns the same amount of this company as the person who doesn't. But that is considered to be fair somehow. The output ends up being so small and so scrunched that it actually kind of destroys the market. Then you end up with a monopoly because it squeezes out all the competition. There is no competition. You end up with price fixing. You end up with
Inflation.
And unbelievable amounts of inflation just because that's how it works. Now, would I be interested in hearing about mixed economies? Well, of course, we have one. Ours is a heavily regulated economy. It's our economy is more regulated than Denmark's is, than Sweden's is, than Finland's or Norway's. Corporate taxes are higher in this country than they are in those countries. Sweden, here's one. Here's one people love. They just hate hearing this. Sweden's.
Those are the bastions. Well, this is the thing that
they're not socialist countries. That's the thing. They're not.
No. In fact,
they're market economies.
I don't know which someone of the minister of finance in one of these countries over there in the Scandinavian area says, "Well, we're not socialist." He openly says we're a welfare state. That's different. And that I heard that years ago. And I was like. Well,
actually, what he said, you're talking about the Denmark prime minister or president who was answering Bernie Sanders when he was saying, "Stop saying that we're a socialist country." He didn't say that we're a welfare state. He said we're a market economy.
Oh, okay. It was a completely different. The same kind of ideas. He's like, well, we keep being called socialists. We're not socialists. We are a welfare state. And I had to look at the definition of that, and I finally kind of figured out the game of democratic socialism. They call it democratic socialism because in their mind, what they presented as is a welfare state. But if you go through their whole processes of what they're wanting, it's actual socialism. But they present it like a welfare state. So really. If you're not paying attention to it, people easily can fall into it because it sounds so pretty.
Well, and again, this is that linguistic propaganda that I talk about. We actually, David recommended a book to me yesterday, which I've actually read 2/3 of already, in which I recognized one of the authors. It's actually written by two guys, one of which I had read a bunch of his stuff before. He had actually redefined racism, came up with a new definition for it. It's one of those things where it's like, here's the result, so let's reverse engineer it and create stuff to support it rather than have anything objective to say about it. He redefined it. When you redefine it, you gain power. When you redefine socialism, you take away the stigma, you gain power. Mm-hmm. So democratic socialism, to be fair, is not a new concept. This is, I believe, again, in my previous research on such things, the term was first used in Germany in the late 30s. So it's not new, but it has been redefined. What Bernie Sanders talks about is, there's nothing democratic about it. He's very open about saying these companies are too rich and powerful. The government will go ahead and absorb those on behalf of the people. Well, David, I actually read very fast. I read a lot, dude. I can read it. I can read a lot. In a matter of a day, I've been known to read 2 or 3 books. So I'm a voracious reader, man. I love reading. So this is another one of those. This is linguistic propaganda. I think another great example is that we went from the greenhouse effect to global warming to climate change. Well, mostly because of the way that the polling, the focus groups went with those things. So the focus group said, well, this term isn't working. Let's come up with a term that actually works. So now, because people can go, hey, it's not warming. It's actually cooling here. Okay, climate change.
Let's use an ambiguous term. It's very ambiguous.
And that's the other thing is that as I said, in probably our very first webcast that we were doing, live stream, it's funny. Here, this is something that we hear a lot. Anyway, in the very first, I was talking about linguistic propaganda. The things that you repeat are engineered for you to repeat them. So if you say things like, they need to pay their fair share, that was a very carefully crafted, engineered bit of linguistic propaganda that makes an argument without making an argument. It is like this wonderfully built straw man. It's actually meant to steel man the argument, though. It's actually meant to say because it implies something. It implies that whatever group that you're targeting doesn't pay their fair share. And actually, Martin would probably say that fits right into that fairness, care and fairness moral foundation that people who identify themselves as liberal or progressive would latch right onto. But when I look at it, I go, okay, what's fair share then? That part doesn't matter. The specifics don't matter. There is no such thing as a fair share anyway. So when you ask for a definition of what that means, well, the best that a country ever did was in the 1950s and 60s when the tax rate was 70 to 90%. No one paid that. I believe there were 26 tax brackets during that time period. And there were just as many, and the word loophole, that's another one. Loophole has a connotation. Does loophole not say to you, we found a way to worm our way out of it?
Yeah.
We all then have the same loopholes. Can you write off your kid's college education? Yes. Can you deduct the mortgage interest on your house? Yes, those are loopholes then. So you're just as much criminal as the rich people that don't pay their fair share and they escape it by going through loopholes. Stop listening to that crap. This is another great one. I love this. World 20th happiest countries: Finland, Denmark, Switzerland, and Norway. Netherlands, Sweden, New Zealand, Luxembourg, Canada, etc., etc., etc. I have something for you to ponder, David, based on something that you just said earlier. Who could live in such a homogenous environment? I don't understand it. One of the things I want you to look up is what is the percentage of foreign people or non-Danish born people who live in Denmark. Then do the same thing for Finland. I believe you'll find that it's about 99.7% homogenous. So, and that isn't to be, I'm not saying that, living with people of other races or nationalities or whatever makes you miserable. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that cultural cohesion comes from, like, let's talk about Denmark. 900 years of the exact same ideas. Do you know that Denmark's a monarchy? They actually have a king. It's fun. In their constitution, it is written that the king has to be a Protestant too. It's right in their constitution. It's kind of funny. So Denmark is almost completely Danes. So, I actually understand where it comes from, David. I've read it. But what I love is that, so let's talk about this. Okay, let's look at this. This is actually, he's making my point for me. The World Happiness Report is an annual survey by the Sustainable Development Solutions Network for the United Nations. It looks at the state of global happiness in 156 countries, ranking countries by the Gallup World Poll in 6 factors: levels of GDP, life expectancy, generosity, social support, freedom, and corruption. Corruption income? So let's look at that. Danes, and I've been to Denmark, and Danes are a really interesting group of people. I can tell you this right now, David. The Danes are probably the most nationalistic group of people I've ever met in my entire life. Now, again, I don't, actually it does. What I'm saying is that social cohesion produces happiness. Social cohesion produces trust for your fellow man, for your fellow Dane. It produces trust for the people in your neighborhood. It produces trust for your police department. It produces trust for your government. If you look, also, you'll find that the Danes have a great deal of trust in their government. So do the Swedes. So do the Germans. The Germans, on the other hand, they're very different. They find these kinds of conversations to be kind of crass. They don't like talking about those things. Those are things that you talk about, you talk about those privately. So here we go. You just said Sweden, though. I wasn't talking about Sweden, but still, this is actually, again, it's making my point for me, is that there is a social cohesion that comes from the homogeneous nature of these countries. Here's another one. Look up the people of Japan. How many people how many applications for foreign citizenship did the nation of Japan approve in the last couple of years?
I've looked this one up.
The last number that I had was 11.
12?
It was 11.
11. Okay, yeah.
Because there is a social cohesion that comes with the Japanese don't want anybody screwing with their culture and their heritage, and they are afraid that allowing people from all different nations in will actually screw up their idea of heritage and culture.
They're very. My aunt is Japanese, and I can tell you that they're very, very proud of.
They're extremely nationalistic, extremely. And so what we have here in this country is the melting pot idea, and what
this is an experiment, right?
It is, and what we have here is that we're trying to accommodate the genuine needs of people, needs being religious, educational, lots of religious, especially here in this country, because we accept all different religions. You can practice anything you want here. You can say anything that you want here. Do you think that you could speak against Allah, for example, in some Middle Eastern countries without repercussions and law being a problem? No, you can't. But here you can. You're absolutely free. We can say anything the hell we want here. The fact that we're talking this and I could say, fuck the president, he's a piece of shit, we can get away with that in this country. In many countries, you can't. So that's what I'm talking about. So here we have all of these people that bring all of these different ideas that actually do most definitely enrich the culture of this country on whole, because it isn't homogenous. But the other thing that it does bring are people that say, well, there's these things are out of whack. We don't trust you. You don't like us. You don't, people that don't look like us, that have the same religion as us. So it brings also with it some challenges that we need to learn to overcome. And in 248 years, we haven't so far. We have not overcome those challenges completely. In fact, I would argue that as we get closer to overcoming some of them, the same tools that are pulled out of the bag to fight inequality, to bring people closer together by tearing down cultural barriers, as those barriers come down and the needs for those tools actually begin to wane, those tools are then repurposed. And instead of using them to bring us good things, they're used as bludgeons. And then we end up creating cultural divides again. There is very little cultural cohesion in this country anymore, especially when you say the country's evil. It's bad. It's founded on these horrible things. You're horrible for the way you look. All of the bad things come from here. The way that, that is going to destroy cohesion. You don't hear that. The Danes are very proud of their Viking heritage. Trust me. They're also very proud of their conquest and their enslavement of the Moors. They're very proud of their enslavement of the Irish. They're very proud. They're proud of this shit. They love this stuff. And they're very happy to talk to you about it. I loved going on tour as a musician. I've been to, I want to say 29 countries, and I would hang out with everybody. And it always came down to political and cultural conversations. I wanted to learn as much as I could about their homeland and the way their government's formed. The French are a crack. I love the French. We have this kind of stereotype here that says the French are kind of rude and snooty, and they're not. Parisians are. But Parisians aren't French. They're Parisians. So the French are really welcoming and warm, and they're full of piss and vinegar. They're a lot like Americans. They're fighters. These are rebels. They want to kick the government's ass all the time. So they're really pissed off. They come and they elect somebody that they think is going to represent them, and that same person does some more. That person does the same shit the last guy did. Then they get pissed off and kick that guy out. It's very similar to the way it is here. They have the same concerns. They have the same... challenges with their government that we do. And it was really fascinating to talk to these guys. I was on tour with a French band for, 6 weeks? And we had a day off in Nuremberg. And we were going to go to the Nuremberg Holocaust Museum, and it starts freaking raining. We were going to walk. And it starts raining, so we ended up hanging out at this truck stop, pulled up a bunch of chairs, sat around the gas pumps at this truck stop, and we talked French politics all day. It was freaking great. Talk about, you want to broaden yourself and learn how other people in the world see things and think, go talk to them. It's the best way in the world to learn it.
Yeah, yeah.
So trust,
Communication.
it's funny because David's saying that, trust is not a measurement. That you're playing semantics here, dude. Trust is one of the things that breeds happiness, because from trusting your neighbor, you find a sense of comfort, which brings happiness. There's also one of the metrics isn't we got free healthcare. That wasn't one of the metrics. This is when people who support socialism and concentrated centralized government power bring out the happiness indexes of these non-socialist countries while they're trying to make an argument for that they are socialist, which they aren't. They say, well, look how happy they are. So why are they happy? Well, because of free stuff. No, that's not why. They have a tradition and a heritage that they are proud of. And in so doing, they are bound by that tradition and their heritage. They come together to fly that flag together. Now, of course, they don't always, I don't want to make it sound like it's a big kumbaya fest. They don't agree on everything. Of course they don't. But at the same time, they trust themselves more than they trust us. The Germans don't trust people from outside. Man, they don't trust anybody. And I don't blame them. The Italians are a crack. I love Italians because they're kind of, they kind of look at everybody other than Italians as kind of like this strange bug that they're going to keep. It's kind of cool. The bug's kind of cool. We're going to keep an eye on it to see if it bites somebody or whatever. But, we're glad the bugs are here. They're all right. But they're not Italians. They're not Italian bugs. The Spanish, fierce and proud. Love those folks in Spain. Hungarians are really one of the hardest people in the world for me to put my finger on, because they're kind of, Hungary was like this, conquered by Rome and then fought over by Northern Europe. And so it's like right in the middle of this big mess. And as a result has some of the most fabulous culture I've ever witnessed. It's breathtaking.
What about Greece?
Oh, God. Greece, man, talk about a kick in the ass. Greece has got the corner on the market is stereotypical. Loud, happy, raucous, very proud. Again, proud of being Greek. Mm-hmm. We're not allowed to be proud to be Americans. That's evil and wrong. And so that kind of divides. That's what chops up. That's why are we not happy? Because we don't trust anybody.
Big factor.
So, but you go and talk to the people of Greeks. They're Greek. They're proud. So are Italians. So are Germans. Germans are a lot more reserved about it, though. They find it to be, like I said, it's kind of crass. It's almost embarrassing. Martin's asking here. Don't the Danish frown in individuals showing off? Frankly, I don't know. But I spent enough time with a bunch of Danes that pretty much showed off. That's what they did, like, constantly, man. And these were really some of the most fascinating characters I've ever gotten to know was the Danes. Big, strong, very masculine men. Proud to be Danish kind of thing. Really, I actually read a book from a philosopher who moved out of Denmark. He was born Danish. And he was talking about how they are the most narcissistic group of people on the face of the planet. I read this whole book and I was kind of going, yeah, again, that's kind of subjective.
Isn't Lars Ulrich a Dane?
He's Danish. Yeah, he sure is.
Okay, well then.
So he's your yardstick, huh? We're just gonna, yeah. Lars, he's kind of a prick. So, and David again here, he's trying to challenge this idea that it has something to do with something else that he still hasn't defined. If your hypothesis were true, the happiness index would be in rank order of homogeneity. It almost is. So there are other factors. What I'm saying is that is a factor that needs to be considered. And this is also why we're still, the U.S. is still in the top 20, and there are 157 countries in the world. So, what should the ranking be, David? The top 5, top 3, top 10? Where do we go and say, well, it's because of free stuff, and it's because their companies have been taken over by groups of people that run them, instead of and those countries don't have that anyway. Actually, one of the things I was going to say earlier, here's one that people hate hearing. They don't like this. Sweden was one of the most wealthy countries on the face of the earth. until 1974 when they decided to become an actual socialist country. By 1982, their economy was absolutely devastated. They taxed some of their citizens at over 100% of their income, including the author of the Pippi Longstocking series. She actually took a picture and published it in the paper of her taxes where she paid, I believe it was 102 or 103% of her income. Companies like Volvo were born there. Nokia, these are not Nokia, but IKEA. Thank you. IKEA. They left they fled. They actually they went basically. I think Volvo went belly up and ended up being sold to a Middle Eastern and then a Korean company. The countries it was completely devastated. So they went back to a market system and recovered actually quite quickly. Sweden's a great country. They were one of the first to have a constitution that guaranteed free speech before the U.S. Actually, they were really a beautiful model of Enlightenment thinking. So they tried this experiment. It screwed up their entire country.
Decades. It went on for 30, 40 years, didn't it?
No, it went on. Like I said, they discovered that the country was completely broke by like 1981 or 82. It didn't even last a full decade. But it took them like 2 decades to completely recover, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you, Jerry. Actually, Jerry is saying that I've been to Europe and I'm of European descent. I have to say Christians' perceptions of the cultures of individual European nations is on point. And these are, again, I don't like using anecdotal, my own personal experiences as like evidence for something. I'm sharing my opinions of the conversations I had and the people that I met. We discussed their countries on whole. I visited these countries many times. I also had to apply for visas in a couple of them, etc. One of the most impactful experiences that I ever had was going to Dubai. We played Dubai twice, and there's no such thing as somebody who was born in Dubai. I think I said this just a couple nights ago.
Yeah, you said it to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That was off camera though, wasn't it?
That was off camera.
So we arrive in Dubai and we're being treated like royalty. A 4-star hotel in Dubai is actually kind of a 5-star hotel in the U.S., but theirs are like 7 stars. So, so we got ourselves beautiful 4-star accommodations. We were driven around. We were picked up in Escalades. It was a big deal. They made a big deal out of us. We had this really cool signing session where there was a Q&A. We all sat at tables. The place was packed with people who wanted pictures and autographs. And as I began doing what I do, and that's talking to everybody, where are you from? How did you come to Dubai? What do you think of Dubai? Why are you here? No one was from there, and I heard stories from everyone, and I mean everyone, about how their home country, whether it was Lebanon or Egypt or Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, were devastated by ISIS, by corrupt governments. They were forced off of their family land. Some of them had described seeing their families murdered in front of them as they barely escaped. And I'm sitting here going, you should never make a big deal out of me. I am a spoiled California punk. That's what I am. What you guys have survived is inexplicable to me. I couldn't possibly understand it. So I really appreciate that you liked the music that we make and that we came to play for you. But please don't hold me up. You guys are the heroes. You guys are a big deal. This is, I have been, by comparison, coddled my entire life. And that's how I got here to begin with. My journey that led me here had to do with where I was born. Mm-hmm. And it was really powerful and it was really humbling to hear some of these really awful stories and have these people who came to hear us play and celebrate the music. And my God, talk about some of the greatest crowds I've ever played for. We're in Dubai and in Brazil. The Brazilians are, when it comes to music, are completely insane. Total lunatics. Brazil is a socialist country. It is. I have never witnessed true poverty ever until I went to Brazil. I did not know what poverty really looked like. And it's really interesting. You want to talk about a divide between rich and poor, between powerful and the oppressed. We were in Sao Paulo, which I believe is the most violent city in the world, at least at one point it was. And I've never really, again, you get off an airplane because you can't really drive from city to city in Brazil. The cities are gigantic. There's 20, 30, 40, 50 million people in them. And then there's nothing but freaking Amazon and jungle for 400 miles until you get to the next city. So you have to, fly between the cities. At least that's the way we did it on our tour. We flew to those cities because of the distances between them. You get off the airplane, and airports are generally built in not great areas, right? So you're used to you fly into an airport, and it's generally industrial around it. Because it's not, you don't want to build an airport in the middle of a neighborhood. We have that in like San Diego, but otherwise they build them in the middle of, they build them in the middle of old neighborhoods and industrial areas, right? So, but you do expect that as you get further away, what we're used to here in this country, especially and in Europe, is as you drive further away from the airport that the neighborhoods improve. They don't in Brazil. They're run down. They are filled with drug dealers, gang members, prostitutes, gangs of kids who will run. They'll see that you have like a camera, and 40 kids will rush you and grab your camera, and there's nothing you can do about it. They're going to overwhelm you. They call it swarming, and that's all over. I've never seen anything quite like this. We get to Rio de Janeiro, which, because it's a tourist destination, they have designed it so that you really don't see much of that. And local law enforcement is particularly brutal because they need to put on a good face for Rio. They are really, if you don't belong on the beach with the rich Americans and Europeans, they will come and drag you off of it and beat you. But all throughout Brazil, it was the same kind of thing. Sao Paulo, again, most dangerous city in the world, I believe. We're in the middle of all of this poverty, walking through this neighborhood. We're going to go get something to eat. And all of a sudden, there's this giant wall, this beautiful stone wall that looks like it was extraordinarily expensive to build. It's very, you can tell when really skilled stone cutters using the best possible rock they can find have built something, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like a city block. It's this gigantic fence. And you look up and it's being babysat by guys with machine guns. This is a rich person's house right in the middle of the most devastating poverty I've ever seen. Where people are literally living in refrigerator boxes. So this is, again, this kind of broadens you when you go out and you see the rest of the world, and you come. I always loved coming home, because again, it gave me a more of an appreciation for what it is that this country is great about. What is great here. We have to accept the greatness with the ugliness, but we can't pretend that one is great and the other one doesn't exist, and we can't pretend that the ugliness sometimes does not overtake what's great about it. We can't do that. And when you travel the world and you see this kind of stuff, you recognize it. And this is why, again, I appreciate what you said, Jerry, about different. Each European nation is not the same. Their people aren't the same. The cultures aren't the same. They want to, unionize the European Union and say we're all the same. No, you're not. The people in Belgium are very different from the people in Belarus. Very different. So are the quality of living. I loved being in some of the Eastern Bloc countries. I've been to Serbia. I've been to Slovakia, Slovenia. I've been to the Czech Republic. I've been to Ukraine. And you can see the way the Soviets built the Soviet Empire built these cities to be basically cracker boxes. The idea, and it's funny because it was done by design. Buildings had exactly the same size apartments in each one, exactly the same number of apartments in each one. The only thing that was different is they'd paint one green, one yellow, and one red, and one blue, so that you knew which one you lived in when you walked home from work. All of the industry was built within, I believe it was 2 city blocks of each one of these groups of apartments, and within one block of all of them was a coffee shop, a restaurant, and a shopping store, and that's it. It was all built the same way. It was very confusing, ugly, and linear until you got to what they called special cities. Special cities are where, like at the foot of a uranium mine, they would build a town where they would house engineers and politicos. These were lush. They were luxurious. They had far more options. So people weren't equal in the Soviet Union, the outcomes were not engineered to be equal. You were special if you worked for the Soviet cause, and that cause was party, one party. This is what terrifies me about the idea that we're going to turn Washington, D.C. into a state and turn Puerto Rico into a state, is because it's pretty obvious how the voting will go, and it will actually eliminate a two-party system effectively. We'll have one party. The Soviet Union was built on one party. Cuba is one party. Venezuela is one party. There's no opposition of any real consequence to these ideas. And then you end up with this, here, this is the way you're all going to live. We're going to plan it for you. It's all very uniform and very much the same, unless you are party. If you're party, you get special stuff. You get nicer places. You get more options. You get greater liberties. You know, that stuff is the way these things work. This is how China currently works. Theirs is actually more terrifying than any of that.
This is, I kind of mentioned this to you, but I think that the term, no, it just left out of my head. But the form of economies called stakeholder capitalism is what China has.
Mm-hmm. Well, that or state capitalism.
Or state capital.
It's
Someone
state.
tried to, again, we're going back to the progressives redefining it as, it's stakeholder.
Well, what's funny about state capitalism is that it's very close to economic fascism. It's really, but then again, the United States is not too far from I think we're more of a fascist nation economically than we are. This is not a free market system. Free market system doesn't exist here. You know, it does on the macro, but not the micro, or the micro. Yeah, the macro, not the micro. Here's an example. I have a small business that I own. Let's say you own one, and you want to hire my little company to build you your computer network and provide you with computer network security. You and I negotiate the terms of that deal. We agree on how much you're going to pay me. I agree on what it is I'm going to provide to you. We shake hands. I end up better in terms of the money you pay me. You end up better in terms of the services that you got. That's pure capitalism. You know, it was 100% voluntary. Both parties walk away better than that's what capitalism really is. The Marxist definition of capitalism is not. You know, so, but what I have to give Marx a lot of credit for being the very first person to actually describe the functions of capitalism, rather than that idealistic idea that I just gave you. So the one thing that people tend to forget, and especially now during COVID, 99.7% of business in the United States is small business. You know, we have this perception that it's all about big corporations that are ripping everybody off. It's not. Corporations make up, you know, those big companies are somewhere in that 0.3% of business in this country. So when we talk about, businesses, we just need to pull everybody home, let the businesses, there's some of them are going to fail. Let 97.3% of the businesses in this country fail, and what you have left are supposedly who it is that you're railing against. The big corporations are the only ones who can afford to survive.
That would also cause a very large transfer of wealth.
Yes, and we just saw the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the world just took place. $3.3 trillion went to the top, and Americans got $1,200 apiece. This was something that we were going to talk about, and we ended up meandering on the socialism subject.
To me, all these subjects are fascinating, so I don't care which direction it ever goes.
Well, I really appreciate. Who was it that just said? David says you've killed. Okay, I'm gonna go up a little bit. You cannot become a citizen in Japan. No, but how many applications for foreign visas did they accept? Like none. They don't want anybody screwing around with their system or taking advantage of what it is that they offer. Here's another one. David, look up the low birth rate problem in Japan that is creating a serious problem for their welfare state. They haven't had a birth rate this low since post-World War II, which is actually, it has the potential to bankrupt their freebies. You know, their social welfare system could be bankrupted because they're not producing enough drones to earn the money to take in order to provide these services. To the point where the Japanese president or prime minister, whatever he is, actually went on TV and was encouraging people to procreate, which is something that had to have been painfully embarrassing to anybody who's Japanese. You know what I mean? So we actually face the same issue here in this country as more and more people are like, oh, we're not bringing kids in this world and all these progressive ideas take place. We are going to be able to afford socialism very soon. There won't be enough drones earning enough money because you can't. I posted the other day, if we taxed all 1,400 and however many billionaires in the country 100% of their income, it would pay for 4 months of Medicare for all. Well, we're going to tax the millionaires and the billionaires. And again, that's that whole idea that there's some fairness somewhere in there.
Well, even with that fairness, Christian, the problem with this is where when we get into the Medicare for all or free health care for everybody, which we even the NHS has gone on record as admitting is that those are basically goods and services, which when you come to goods and services, they're finite. There is a limitation. And without going into the moral aspect of it, how are you going to take care of all these Americans for free when you have to employ people in their labor, and they have to be able to do this willingly and voluntarily and want to do it? It's kind of like, let's look at it as me and your musicians. When someone says, well, why should you get paid this to be a musician? You should do it because you love it. Of course. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. I like to play music, and I do love it.
Well,
but the fact that I can't exploit my labor is because of reasons. Because of reasons. You have to give me an incentive here.
And that's pure Marxism. Marx contended that a worker, in order to be, this is like the value theory of labor idea, is that the worker has to see his own work reflected in whatever it is he's working on in order to have value to himself as that worker. Okay, so for example, if you have a worker who, and I love the word worker. What's a worker? What the fuck is a worker? I don't even know what the hell that is. But anyway, is it like a bee or something? An ant? A fucking worker?
Yeah, what is it?
I like, I could say construction workers. That makes sense. Or contractors. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. But to kind of, well, if you're not a capitalist, you're a worker. No, stop that. That's oversimplifying something for your own benefit. Stop doing that. Anyway, so you have a guy who builds chairs. And if he doesn't see himself in the result of his labor, then there's no value in that labor. Okay, and so that's why what you just said, it's like, well, why should you be paid for making music? You see yourself. You're creatively satisfied in making music. I got to eat. I can't eat creative satisfaction. I got to have well, then we'll just give it to you and you can play music all day. Well, then why would I want to produce anything? I sit around and do nothing all day. I could eat and make little me's and be perfectly happy. Why would I want to produce anything for anybody if I don't have to? So, again, and now I'm oversimplifying, because the simple fact of the matter is there needs to be a balance between these ideas. There really does. And this is, I've said it before on this on our stream, and I'll say it again. Conservatives need liberals. Liberals need conservatives. You need the left and the right. Otherwise, you have a single party that runs roughshod over everybody. A balance between them is absolutely necessary. If we're going to have parties, unfortunately, we're stuck with this idea. But efforts to tip that balance come from very powerful organizations, that want to influence us to think differently and think their way. Jerry says you should have your own show on a network cable channel. I'm not joking. Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. I'm having so much fun just doing this. There's 4 or 5 people watching. That's fine. I think as we get better at doing this and making our presentation, we get better at things like mic checks and stuff. That I would like to see it kind of blossom into something else. I'm really looking forward to talking to David tomorrow night, because David obviously has a completely different point of view, and that's what I want to learn. I don't have a lot of conversations with. He actually has, in my own estimation, a more extreme point of view than I do. It's further away from me than most of the other people who I have differences of opinion with. So to me, that's fascinating. I want to see how it is that I can learn to understand that better and have better conversations with them. You know, this is going to be I'll be honest with you, I'm a little nervous. You know, it's just going to be, challenging to be sure, but I think it'll be very fruitful. So Japan's not on the happiness list. I didn't say that it was. My point was in terms of this is a big fat socialist company with a country with a huge welfare state, centralized control of pretty much everything right down to the size of apartment you're allowed to live in. And they don't want anybody coming in because they don't want anybody screwing up their nationalistic ideas, you know, their heritage, their ideas. So, and then let's see. Here we go. Happiness is an emotional state. Emotional states are not constant. It was a stupid thing to try and measure. I must be German. This is why I challenge. I agree, David. It's going to be fun, and you know, I've thought a great deal about how to make it really productive. So, and we'll get hooked up tomorrow, and we'll do a little sound check, and I'll give you some notes that I took and stuff. So I don't want you to feel like I'm blindsiding you with anything. So I wrote down a bunch of shit. It's like, here, let's talk about this stuff. This is, you know, that way we have some, you know, we both know what we're getting into. To Martin's point, to return to Martin's point here, I get distracted easy. Thank you very much, Brian. Thanks for coming. And yeah, we're going to sign off here in a minute anyway. I really appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. Thanks, buddy. And please, you know, I encourage everybody to be a part of the conversation. If you got anything you want to chime in on, Brian, always do so. We're happy to have you. Thanks, dude. Happiness is an emotional state, but people love to use the happiness index as some sort of representation of an ideal that they haven't quantified. They haven't attached it to the ideal. They haven't said, well, all these countries give away their, you know, they have free healthcare and they've got this, that, and the other thing, and free school, and look how happy they are. Show me how any of that correlates to happiness. That none of the studies do it. But we can, through established science, in terms of social sciences, establish happiness comes from a sense of oneness with your neighbors, your community, and your country. We know that. I mean, the science is in. We know this. We don't even bother studying that shit anymore because it's been kind of done to death. We also know that when there is social cohesion comes from a sense of trust. That sense of trust breeds happiness and contentment. It also increases life expectancy. Stress is much lower. When people trust one another, they tend to fuck each other and respect each other. They tend to fuck each other over less. Crime is reduced. You know, I can draw correlations to these metrics that the UN's group here uses all day in terms of their social cohesion. Social cohesion in this country is all over the place. You know, based on the way we look, where we live, you know, whether or not we agree with this politician or that one. You know, these things can be worn out. We just saw it the other night. We talked about politicians wanting to blacklist people who voted for a particular president, you know, to bring them before tribunals, make them confess their sins. You know, what kind of social cohesion is that message going to breed? We had a president who took half the country and said, well, since you don't like me, fuck you. What kind of social cohesion is that going to bring? None. That isn't going to help us. It makes it worse. And when we're dealing with large groups of people who already have different backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, different religious beliefs, they eat different foods, for God's sake. They wear different types of clothing. You bring all of that in here and we're trying to say, hey man, we're all cool. We're cool with it. I'm glad you're here. But we have to find something common so that we can all live together with some sort of cohesion that brings out the best in us all. Anyway, so I'm going to stop proselytizing, and I'm going to sign off, actually. Thanks for being here tonight, Dustin. I know that you didn't get to contribute as much. I seem to actually be on kind of a tear tonight, but I do appreciate you.
I'm being Mike shy because it sounds funny. So I'm not going to talk.
Kind of sucks on this end. It sounds really good. The mic sounds great. So I appreciate you, David. I'm looking forward to talking to you tomorrow, sir. Jerry, thanks for hanging out with us. Martin, thanks for chiming in tonight. Appreciate it. Troy was here. We had a bunch of people actually come and go. And as always, if I got something wrong, mischaracterized something, misquoted information, please let me know. Happy to, the high idea of the Skeptic Tank here is that we're looking to learn. We want to build bridges. We want to learn to better communicate. We want to be better people. And sometimes we agree with each other and sometimes we don't. But if I get stuff wrong, I'm always willing to change that. I'd much rather admit that I'm wrong in the face of better information and change my position than stand on bullshit and pretend that it's real for the rest of my life, which so many people do. See you all tomorrow. Thanks so much. Hang on a second, Dustin.